kept zeroing in on that. But when you come to local government, we did not have a debate on it. It's almost therefore you thrust it on people. As I understand it, it takes the form of trying to line up with what you've done in the THA. But it certainly hasn't worked there. Or at least certainly the Tobagonians aren't happy with what they've received. I don't think across the board, crossing party lines, they don't feel it is satisfied. And of course, I think to get acceptability for the property tax, they try to worm it into local government to say, well, the recipients of this are the boroughs. So if you want to see your roads taken care of and your community developed, then you need to accept property tax as a given. And I think that's where the nuances of what was being said sought to allow for property tax. But there was really no discussion other than the word reform.
Yeah.
I heard the word reform. I understand what you're trying to do is to create divisions within each region, so you have a secretary for agriculture or for roads.
A greater element of autonomy in these 14.
I don't think the people buy into it, frankly. I don't think, and therefore they still feel that central government is what is the real major driver in the country, and local government plays second fiddle to that.
And I think there were times when there are some people who've gone through the political spectrum, who've gone through some of these exercises over years, Derek, who say that we don't need local government in an environment as small as we have. There's no need for local government.
So the discussion should have been, how do you define the role of local government? As Timothy was saying, we had no serious debate on what local government was all about, far less local government reform, because most of this population have no idea where local government play in the structure of governance. And part of where the campaign got away and became a national campaign was a number of institutions in this society who would have been calling for a debate. There was no call for any kind of debate amongst the leaders to talk about local government. But when you have the rhetoric saying that this is the most singular important issue in our structure, but we've had no debate at the community level, at the corporation level, or at the national level. And that's where this campaign has been basically that of a referendum. Either a referendum on whether Dr. Rowley's political survival will actually happen in the next coming months, or whether or not Kamala Prasad-Bissessar could hold on to the leadership if she does not succeed tonight.
You think there are some consequences if things don't turn out the way that she probably expects?
There must be political consequences for leaders who perhaps have not been successful at their campaign, or whose campaign has been out of touch with your swing voter and your undecided voter. Yes, you're going to have the core coming out, more of the core. But if you can't spread the political appeal to your party, to the non-traditional areas, then you have no reason to remain in this political game.
All right, for now, there are two of the people we've invited to be part of the broadcast with us in the Zoom at this point. Let's bring them in one after the other. We have Dr. Soyafat Angus with us, political leader of the IDA in Tobago, and there's Nikolai Edwards to come from the Progressive Party. Well, good evening, Dr. Soyafat Angus. Let's start with you. What are your overall comments about what transpired today and how we move forward with whatever results we will end up with at the end of this exercise?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. And it certainly was an interesting campaign. And I have to agree with both speakers that you didn't get the feel that it was a total local election campaign. It felt as if persons kick-started the general campaign from now, and that is how persons went about the whole journey over the last few weeks. And it's interesting the point that was made about local government reform and the average man on the street not understanding really what it means to them in terms of, okay, so local government reform, how does that affect me? Does it make my life better? Does it make the quality of my life better? In spite of everything that is going on. And I think that has not been clearly detailed or discussed with the man on the street. And therefore, I think that is where the election did not sort of deliver in terms of to the people. So it's interesting to see what kind of turnout what type of turnout we would have today in terms of the numbers and where it would go. But, it is, you almost get the feeling that the local government elections, the reform, I should say, the reform topic is almost like a political football, the same as the Tobago House of Assembly autonomy bill that has been a political football for election to election to election. Because we saw where, one of the videos they actually sent out by the PNM actually had Frankie Khan in there doing the consultations. And we all know how long that was ago and how many elections. I believe it's at least 3 elections now we're talking about local government reform, and we still yet to see it actually being done and executed. So we're quite at an interesting time in our history, and we can only hope that regardless of who considers themselves to win, because at the end of the day, you may even end up with, the same thing that we had before, whether one gets more or one gets less, regardless of what it is. I think the PNM has a responsibility that they are in governance and they have to move that local reform bill. They have to move it forward. We can't wait till another local election again to campaign on the same thing. That does not work.
Yeah, I'm tempted to ask whether there's any kind of comparison to be made, any kind of say, insights that we could learn in Trinidad and Tobago, we could glean in Trinidad and Tobago from the I would say the type of local government that there is in effect in Tobago, but with what has happened since the last election in Tobago, that may be difficult to as a proposition to even put forward.
That's true, because with what has occurred, we are even seeing that the bill that is currently at the doorstep of Parliament will not be enough to address the issues that we have currently emerging within the Assembly, where it is apparent that we have yet another runaway administration. So for the last 40 years, we've had every political administration that has come in ends up being a runaway administration. Now, persons would say that this administration ran away much sooner than would have happened with the others before. But at the end of the day, we have no way of the people having a real say in controlling the administration. And therefore, we have to look at how we are developing those legislatures to make sure that there is actually some measure of control.
To what extent it's a disappointment for you in that respect that at this point in our history, in our march from colonialism, going through independence, going through republicanism, to the point where we have what has happened in Tobago, and that Tobago can't really shine a light for us here in Trinidad and Tobago, in Trinidad as we speak today?
It is disappointing, because I know the people of Tobago had hopes that with the change that they voted for overwhelmingly in the last 18 months, that we would have seen something significant change in the way that this administration would have approached the business of the people. However, across Tobago, you hear people talking about, wow, we just got an exchange, and perhaps even worse in some areas, that it really was an exchange and we did not get the change that we wanted to see, that we believed in. And people are very disappointed with that.
All right, let's come to our friend Nikolai Edwards, political leader of the Progressive Party. Good to see you, my friend. What's your take to begin with?
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to join on this important discussion, because the whole issue of local government and reform, as mentioned by the previous speakers, really, for me, took center stage in a way that I don't think has been necessarily touched on by the previous speakers, but it was the deceptiveness is what I can really describe it as, the deceptiveness at which the government tried to put forward local government reform, in that you had the minister with responsibility for local government going around doing interviews on television and so forth, and more or less, I think, trying to fearmonger citizens into believing that the only way in which local government reform would occur is if the PNM were to retain office and even grow let's say, the number of corporations it has under its belt. Because it was language and I think a misdirecting of persons who just really don't know better, because we don't take the time to really educate citizens, I think, when it comes to elections, when it comes to voting and so forth, and really examining issues. And it was put forward that the councillors, if the councillors were to go in favor, those seats in favor of the UNC, there would be a huge spoke put in the wheel of the government's thrust to put forward local government reform. And when you really think about it, councillors themselves have no role at this point, especially when it comes to the implementation of local government reform, because the legislation has been passed and it's a matter now of enacting that legislation, having the entire act proclaimed. And one really wonders, therefore, if the government had gotten its way and given the opportunity to really have the election called 1 year after it was constitutionally due, that they would have been able to put forward the reform. That was the reason why the Attorney General had come forward and was putting that to the population. But the sad thing is that despite everything, you're 4 months shy of that original deadline that you had set for your own self, and yet we're not seeing us moving leaps and bounds ahead in terms of the implementation of the local government reform. So that, for me, was a huge issue. Outside of that, I think, based on conversations that I've been having with persons, my peers and so forth, it was consequential, I think, in the minds of the average citizen. And it really was those moments where people, in talking to them, they would in shock ask, oh, we have an election coming up. And I think that's just how disconnected a lot of people were from the election campaign, what was taking place and the issues generally, because people are fed up. And I've listened to a lot of the interviews that those Vox interviews on various media, and I think it's the same thing over here. People are fed up, they are disinterested, and they feel as though what we have right now just simply isn't working across the board.
All right, thank you very much. Stay where you are, both of you. We'll come back to you during the course of the discussion, not too long from now. But let's come back inside Tim Smith. Let me just read what is in the Express newspaper today about the headline over it is UNC complains to the EBC, claims special ballot irregularities. The United National Congress political leader Kamala Persad-Bissessar is insisting that she has formally written to the Elections and Boundaries Commission to make a complaint and a call for an investigation into special ballot irregularities, which the party claims it observed on Friday. It was also noted that this correspondence followed a complaint by the UNC that it was unlawfully barred by the EBC from witnessing the opening of the special ballot boxes. And she says here, thankfully, the EBC reviewed and reversed its decision on that issue, and we were in fact able to witness the opening of the special ballots. So that does the complaint stand if in fact what happened?
Well, there are more than one complaint. Obviously, that particular complaint had been addressed, resolved, and I presume is behind us. I can't imagine it becoming the source of any kind of litigation. But the other complaints, I think, about, the question of mishandling ballot papers or broken envelopes that would allow for somebody to put extra ballots in. I think that ultimately, I thought that it seemed to me that the EBC seemed to at some level, to accept the objection being made by the UNC, but on the other hand, sweeping it aside as nothing of significance. And I thought it would have been far better for them to treat it seriously. As to whether these things in the long run have a negative impact, I don't know the answer. But one of the things you could decide to do, all right, X ballots, and it's not all of the special ballots, but there's a significant one. You know what? We will put that aside and count it separately to ensure, did it make the difference? That's a step she could have taken, but just ignored, as it were. And you got the impression she was sweeping it under the carpet, even though she appeared to acknowledge that some events took place and perhaps her officers had not carried out the letter and the spirit of the law and the guidelines, regulations, in the way that they were expected to do. There was some deviance, if you like, or deviation, perhaps I shouldn't say.
Yeah.
There was some deviation from what was expected to be the regulation in which you conduct it. And I would have thought that the EBC, the commissioner, would have said, we're going to review this action because it's not acceptable. If we keep repeating this from election to election, the most important, one of the most important institutions is the EBC. Without that being an independent institution, people lose faith in elections. And if you lose faith in elections, then rioting and revolt is what emerges from that. And I thought she should have taken it more seriously. I don't think in the long run there was real serious damage that occurred, but I don't think that sweeping it under the carpet was the way to go.
Was the best way to go. I'll come back to the comment that the head of the EBC said that we followed the rules. Fern Narcisco. We'll get to her comments for some further discussion. But just look at we have some numbers up there. The first coming in this evening from the counting. This is in the Arima Northeast area for the Arima Borough Corporation. Kim Garcia, who's the PNM candidate, getting 72 of the votes counted thus far. Jairzinho Rigsby of the UNC getting 92, and Kurt Clement, I think that's the PEP. From what I'm seeing there, that's their symbol, Progressive Empowerment Party, getting no votes to this point. That's in Arima Northeast, the first of the numbers on the board.
Do you know how many constituents in that particular? How many voters fall within that particular constituency or district?
Sure. Well, this is, we could check and find out, but these are some numbers for Longdenville, Talparo. And the PNM candidate there, Daniel Webster, thus far registering 26 votes. Ryan Rampersad of the UNC, 172, and Darren Ramsey-Paul, again of the PP, no votes yet on the board. That's in the Couva Tabaki Talparo Regional Corporation and the district, in particular Longdenville, Talparo. Montrose, that's in the Chaguanas Borough Corporation, and Nel Paramsuk for the PNM. Thus far, 37 votes, and Melissa Jadunanan, 112 for the UNC. Local government elections 2023, the numbers are just coming in. Derek Ramsumuja, I didn't know if you wanted to comment at all on this issue about what the complaint from the UNC was about the special ballot boxes open, the special ballots open, and it caused some uneasiness for the UNC. But for Narcissus, the scope is saying that what was done is consistent with the rules governing how these things happen.
Well, let's give credit to the EBC as an institution. Yes, there may have been at times different types of challenges, but overall our election process has been relatively fair and above board. Human beings would tend to make an error or two, but I don't think there was any ill will as what is being proposed. What is interesting, however, is the numbers that we're seeing so far. seem to show a traditional type of voting pattern. But those are hardcore UNC or hardcore PNM areas. So as the night progresses, we will see how close the race is. And I think that's where the EBC issue may be applicable. In certain areas where you're going to win by double-digit votes or single-digit votes, you may have a challenge there, especially if spoiled ballots are more than the difference between winners and losers. So that's why our voting system and the electoral system must be impeccable to keep the trust and confidence in our population.
All right, I want to come back to your point about the fact that the numbers we saw was one district in Arima, which traditionally has been PNM. It changed hands, I think, with the NAR in 1986, that period. But it's solidly a PNM sort of home base. And same thing with Tuvataba Talparo, which is always opposed to the PNM, whether it's the NAR or whether it's the UNC.
One of the things we must see if we can get is from which polling division this represents. As you could realize, the local government districts are made up of maybe 10 to 15 polling divisions. And whether or not what we're getting so far is either boxes prescribed to a particular polling division or the totality of a polling division. And that would be interesting because that will help us determine whether there's been any slippage or any swing, or more importantly, what is the level of where voters are not motivated to come and vote, cast their ballot.
Yeah, and across the constituencies, we have 41 constituencies, but there are 141 districts in the local government setup where people would cast their votes. There were two more than the last time around. There were 139. The PNM was able to hold on to 72 of those, and the UNC 67, and that is what's going into these elections.
But the common denominator are basically that of the polling districts. Whether it's local government or general elections, the polling districts are still the same political unit.
Yeah.
And therefore, if we were to apply that voting tonight onto what may have happened in that polling district in previous elections, be general or local, then we can have a better understanding of whether the electorate has been so motivated or demotivated to participate.
Yeah, and Tim, we're saying the question of treating with some of these issues, local government versus general elections. But before we go there, a point you made, Derek, I wanted to come on that, the question of the call by Mrs. Prasad Bissessa for observers to have come and observe what we do here, because the question is that there's this fear that there would be.
Well, of course, because they've made some complaints, that dramatizes, if you like, the call for international observers. I don't get the impression that, previous local elections, that there were international observers. There were for all our general elections, or should be. They may not have been on all occasions.
Well, not all, but it is something. It's a sort of new feature to the elections in Trinidad, at least in Trinidad and Tobago, for there to be observers, right? Because we prided ourselves for decades on the fact that we know how to conduct this thing. And
But I think it still brings a sense of confidence in the minds of the public to the handling of the election by the EBC, which then, if they portray confidence, or if the international observers have a certain confidence, and you won't get 100%, but then, in fact, in the eyes of the public, the EBC grows in stature, which of course is important. It's important to keep that independence of the EBC, or else you erode democracy seriously, and people no longer have faith and confidence, if you like. So it's important, but I don't think that one would expect, all local elections would have international observers. Certainly, I would certainly recommend that we should have it for general elections, and it should be a principle, not just a matter of whether I feel like it or don't feel like it. It ought to be a principle that we have.
Whether or not it's established that hanky-panky goes on and so on in elections. Derek?
We have pending local government elections in Jamaica in the next 6 months, as well as in Belize, as well as we just had one concluded in Guyana. So I don't believe the precedent exists within our CARICOM countries to have observers for local government elections. Yes, I agree. For the general elections, it is a necessity. However, I believe this is much to do about nothing, really. Yes, there's a concern, but is that concern sufficiently large enough to basically ask international observers? The answer to that is no, because if that was your concern, when you were Prime Minister, you also had local government elections, and you chose not to put that in that space. So we've got to be clear. Not because something is not to your liking, do you go crying like a crybaby. If there's a real problem, yes, but until such a time when that has been established, challenges happen, and they've been tried to be rectified.
Yeah, and there's no point arguing whether or not the circumstances were what they were then as opposed to what they are now, whether things have changed, whether somehow we've become more given to bad behavior and finding ways around.
The bad behavior comes from the political leaders. The bad behavior comes from the allowance or the acceptance of unethical or non-politically ascribed behavior being allowed to occur and silently agreed to by the political leader, right? It does not come from the institutions willingly trying to do something underhand. And this is something we have to recognize. We keep questioning our legitimacy and our public confidence, whether we're talking about the central bank or the parliament or the electoral system, or I just say, forgive me, Timothy, the legal system as well. We keep questioning.
And more than question, we're impugning it
yes,
in some ways.
And sometimes only because we have a particular agenda as opposed to a real problem existing.
You wanted to say something like that, Tim?
What I would say is, I agree with Derek that I didn't think that it called for bringing in international observers for a local election. I think it should be sacrosanct that we do it for general elections. But I would like rather to give more teeth to the ethical, political system, the responsibility for ethics in politics headed by Dr. Vishnu Raghunath. Because what many countries have done is they have put what they put together as guidelines, as principles that don't have any real teeth in it, because they can call you out, and it has political ramifications possibly, but really you need to introduce it into the law so that they have real power to say, if you really cross the line, or maybe we have a threat, if you do this again, we have the power to say you will not be allowed to face the electorate in a particular constituency. Now, if you did that, wouldn't it dramatically change the behavior of our politicians?
And if I may add to that,
yeah.
If we look at the challenge we have with the Integrity Commission and the challenge with the public procurement framework, if we had put more teeth into that element and then drive that as part of the local governance issues, now we will begin to talk about improving how we run our country.
But in a lot of cases, as you raise the issue of, and as I put the question, there were some numbers up on the screen a while ago from a couple of the districts, if you could get them back, and I wanted to bring back in Nikolai Edwards and Dr. Soyafat Angus, and some of these issues we're talking here. That question about whether there is need for some of these things to happen, or people just make an issue because an issue is to be made. Let's take the Council for Appropriate Political Behavior, or whatever it's called under Dr. Raghunath. So he comes and makes a statement and it's attacked from some quarters because he makes a statement. While we're talking, I think there were the numbers up on the screen. You could put them back, Controller, and we could tell the people who may not be seeing what we are broadcasting, the numbers. In the meantime, Dr. Soifat Angus, any of this has resonance in the Tobago situation, the question about questionable behavior on the part of the parties and their leaders?
Well, we talk about the questioning of our institutions,
yeah.
And we saw recently where there's a full frontal attack of the TTPS, of senior counsels, of the Prime Minister, in terms of this whole issue of the investigation ongoing in Tobago. And, I tend to agree with Derek that we seem to be very not trusting of our institutions when it suits us. And that has to change, because at the end of the day, they are given guidelines in terms of how they operate. And you would only hope that, they carry out their duties in the way that they should. And therefore, it's only if you have a lot of evidence to say otherwise that we should really be, castigating them like this. And added to that, we have the Integrity Commission issue. And I saw that publication where so many persons have not reported for so many years, but yet why do we allow them still to go back and be candidates to be representatives and even become representatives? Shouldn't that be something that they should be barred from? If you're not providing your applications as expected while you're in public life, why are you being allowed to go back and face the public?
All right, Nikolai, thank you very much, Dr. Soifat Angus.
The whole idea of ethics, I think, so one might seem very philosophical, and to get there, quite frankly, it has to be with a well-regulated, well-legislated for kind of situation when it comes to elections in particular. And I want to use a reference from a former Attorney General who used it a lot in terms of ring-fencing the issue, because that's what we really have to zone down here to in terms of elections. Are these things properly regulated along or up to the lead up to elections themselves in terms of political parties? In Trinidad and Tobago, quite frankly, political parties are not registered. And I think that doesn't quite really get into the minds of citizens when we think of, we're so accustomed to a history of political parties, and we know which party more aligns in this way and which party aligns in another way and so forth. But when we really think about if political parties, political organizations are provided for properly in our laws, the fact is no. And it was interesting that in 2020, the Prime Minister in Parliament, he would have introduced legislation to deal with some of the things that we've been clamoring for over the years. When we think about campaign financing, when we think about the registration of political parties, when we think about really and truly the impact, the responsibility of political parties and so forth. Good piece of legislation to start with. It was introduced in 2020. We are here in 2023 and it still has not left a joint select committee. And these are the kinds of things that I would love the media to, kind of come out behind and really push. Because when these things go into joint select committees, sometimes they're lost there for 10 years and so forth. And that is a part of our, I think, political and electoral or governance, rather, issues that we really have to treat with. Why fool the population into thinking that in 2020 we're going to see real progress on some important issues that would forever change how we elect persons in this country, their responsibilities and so forth, but also the consequences that they would have to face. When we're finally getting that, it's left in a joint select committee, it's no longer given the priority and so forth. So I say all of this to lead to the point of you can't really expect these people to conduct ethical behavior when they exist in an environment that is not as regulated as it should be. And so, to be quite frankly, this is what we have to deal with. And how we really treat with that is the individual voter, the elector, has to think about his or her morals and values, and do those morals and values align with the political party or the individual who is offering him or herself to you to represent you. So I think it speaks more to what we as a population have been and continue to be willing to accept. And something has to change in that kind of culture in order for us to really expect a lot when you think about it from those persons who are going up to lead us. So yes, of course, we have to do better, but we really have to have a proper plan, I think, to get to that point. And so far, the divisiveness continues to raise ugly head and forces us to see or look the other direction when really and truly we should all be zoning in on these important issues.
All right, thank you very much. I think we will get some numbers up on the screen again. And in the meantime, there's an issue, gentlemen here, that in very many cases, when one of these officials from the independent organizations, whether it's the Integrity Commission, whether it's the Committee for Responsible Political Behavior, when they make a pronouncement, whoever that pronouncement doesn't sort of favor launches attacks and so on. Before your comment, just note these numbers here. This is if you go back to the one we had up previously, control, if we could get back the numbers we just had up on the screen. Yes, PNM Lisa Holder, this is for the Enterprise North Esmeralda, that's in the Shogunas Borough Corporation, getting 668 votes thus far to Justin, short of the UNC with 858. As Enterprise North, and then use Montrose. And Paramsuk is now at 536 for the PNM, and Melissa Jadunanan for the UNC, the same number, 536. There seems to be a real contest taking place, and that is inside the Shogunas Borough Corporation. All right, and there's another one that will come. El Socorro Aranguez North, that's in the Sawon Laventille Regional Corporation, which as we speak is in the hands of the People's National Movement. 171 votes for Karina Nanan and Raquel Ghani of the UNC, polling 635 at this point. Nothing to look at a trend there, but you know, in some cases there are some close races in some of these corporations. Whoever has the majority in any case. Tim Hammersmith, I want to get back to this point about we don't seem to like when things don't go in our favor. We have these independent bodies who get a lot of licks when from the side that is not favored by the
and that will happen. I imagine if it's unfavorable towards you, you're not going to like it. We do need statesmen to be, at times, at appropriate times, to acknowledge that perhaps they cross the line and draw back. I mean, the thing, and a lot has to do with, does whoever makes this pronouncement, can they enforce what they're doing? Because if I could enforce what I say has gone wrong, then you're going to be far more, you know, you will treat me with far more courtesy, because that is it. But one of the important things, as we talk on these issues, what you find is that the checks and balances, independent institutions, if you look at successful nations around the world, those who have succeeded, who have in fact presented independent institutions who are not politically aligned as a check and balance against the system. And we haven't done that, whether it's procurement or whether it's the party financing or whether, you know, we had an economic development and advisory board. All those are checks and balances that need to be legislated and given teeth, as well as the political conduct division, as well as the Integrity Commission. There must be clear lines. I must confess, I think, as a person who's gone through that our integrity legislation needs to be revamped. It is absolutely absurd that you ask me, I understand this at the starting point, you ask me to file, you want to know what I have, really to see by the time I'm ready to leave, if I've multiplied it by a factor of 10 or whatever. I understand that perfectly. But to ask me every year to file another one when perhaps it moved by 5 cents. I mean, that's a reality. That's not, and they say, well, we want support for this. Can you get the bank to tell us that you earn 5 cents more than last year? I mean, it is too, so if you spend your time as an institution focusing on the 80% that is really of no consequence, instead of focusing on the 20% that really has impact. And you must say, look, if your change has moved more than, I don't know what it should be, 100,000, 200,000, whatever you say, then you have to file again. But apart from that, you file your first report, and I want your last report, and I will ask questions as to how you account for the difference. That's what it really is about. And instead, we've overcomplicated it, which is what we tend to do. We love bureaucracy, we love red tape, and when you overcomplicate it, then in fact what you do is introduce opportunities for corruption. Yeah, that's what they just did with the companies legislation. Yeah, you open these opportunities for corruption.
Where an inch might be required, we take a mile, and we move from the sublime to
it's absurd.
To the ridiculous.
But the important thing is that we must have these checks and balances and independent institutions that have teeth, that uphold what is good for the country, and not merely the politicians are concerned about winning the next election. I understand that. But somebody has to, you can't put the fox to guard the hen house, as it were. And somebody has to play that role.
All right, there's a local government coverage here on WES, and we're going to take a break. When we come back in a moment, let's just tell you these numbers before we take the break. It's Saeed Mohammed. He's a PNM person in Lesser Forts West and La Romaine in the San Fernando City Corporation. 39 votes to his account at this point. Rishi Balram Singh doing 164 for the UNC. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
To you by The Home Store, Alan's Funeral Home, Tunapuna, The Original Richard's Bake and Shark, Harmony Villa Blanchisseries, and Fan Zone.
We exposed 5 strangers to KFC's delicious chicken to see if any time could be KFC time. And at the first bite, the party began. We repeated the experiment during the day, during business hours, on weekends, with sunshine, with rain, and it's confirmed. KFC's flavor makes anytime KFC time. KFC, it's finger licking good.
Let the Home Store turn your house into a home you love. Get everything you need to give your home that special look and feel. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. 5 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at Westmore, Pennywise Plaza Shoguanas, C3 Center Branch and C3 San Fernando. Check out our Facebook page for more information and come visit us today. The Home Store. Turn your house into a home you love.
You gave us the inspiration to be first. We gave you the solutions that put you first. You walked with us side by side, and we continue to serve you with pride. First Citizens celebrates with you 30 years of achieving dreams, shaping success stories, and painting brighter futures together. And together, we'll accomplish so much more. First Citizens, together, 30 and beyond.
Fan Zone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Tuesday, August the 15th, Talking Point welcomes you to a special edition of the program as we focus on local government elections 2023. With the issues in TNT affecting us all, every vote counts. Join us for a national discussion as we analyze the results and assess the impact of the elections. With yours truly, Sean Michael Small, my co-host Keaton Shah, and a special guest lineup that will have you covered. August the 15th, 8 a.m. Talking Point is only on WESN, your content capital.
Welcome back to the program. This is Local Government Elections Countdown here on WESN. Well, let's go to Dr. Kirk Mayhew, joining us for the first time now, the Public Relations Officer of the UNC. Just before that, there are some numbers up on the screen. It's happening in Marabella South and Vista Bella for the San Fernando City Corporation. The PNM's Marcus Gadari at 140 and Sasha T. Ali of the UNC at 179. That's in the Marabella South, Vista Bella quadrant, if you like. And in Blanchishes, Santa Rosa for the Tunapuna Piaco Regional Corporations. The PNM's Sheldon Moore at 394 and Cherie Smith of the UNC at 462. That's Blanchishes, Santa Rosa. We have Dr. Sarifat Angus and Nikolai Edwards in the Zoom with us, but we're going to be joined now by Dr. Kirk Mayhew. He's Public Relations Officer of the United National Congress. Good evening, sir. Dr. Mayhew? Okay, I think I have to do something with your audio.
Right, it was muted. Sorry. Hi, how are you? Good evening, everybody.
Very good, thanks. Good to see you. What can you tell us at this point?
Well, we're just waiting for the results at this moment. We've been trying to hear from the various districts as to what's going on. We have heard some reports about things that appear to be irregular. Yesterday, we did have to submit a report about tampered ballot boxes, and the response from the CEO is absolutely unsatisfactory and disturbing in that case. But we will see as things roll out how we will respond to those. But we are confident that today is going to be a good day to ring in some changes for the country.
And Jeffrey, you're predicting that the UNC will end up with more space than it went in with?
Well, yeah, definitely that's what we are looking at, and to control more corporations, to get more aldermen, and to even get a larger share of the popular voters as well as the seats. The seats in the local government election, a lot of people don't know that they are extremely uneven. Some seats like, in Port of Spain is 3,000 people, and then in Cuba it's like over 10,000 people. It's so when the PNM wins a certain number of seats, that's really far less votes than in UNC areas and so forth. So last time in 2019, the UNC got more votes than all other parties combined. And so we're looking to definitely not only hold on to that, but build on it and make further inroads into various corporations, get more aldermen, more seats, and more votes.
So it's possible to get win on the popular vote, but lose district by district?
It especially at local government, because of the way the seats are so uneven, absolutely uneven. That is especially true. It was a 7-7 tie in 2019. We got more votes, as I said, than all other parties combined, but it ended up 7-7 in terms of the control of the corporations.
What is the party's sense as to what is likely to be the overall outcome this time around?
Well, we certainly are looking, as I said, to increase. I don't necessarily want to put any numbers on it, but definitely we expect the majority this time, and to break the deadlock of 7-7, which we saw last time.
Yeah. If we go back to the issue of the alleged opening of the special ballot boxes, or the special ballots boxes,
right. Would you like me to just explain the issue again? Is that it?
Yeah, take a little deep dive into what the issues have been and what's the irregularity here? What's the significance of the irregularity there?
Right. So, all right. So let me just break it down for the viewer that may not be aware of the process at all. Although today is election day, the polls have been open for what they call special electors since Monday. So from Monday to yesterday, Sunday, there were special voters. That means people who may be election agents or other sort of having some sort of role in the election process.
Yeah, people who would have been working today in different capacities and so on. So they make arrangements for them to vote ahead of time.
Either for the EBC or for the political parties.
Yeah, political, right? So I would say police officers and other people like that and so on.
Exactly. And party activists as well.
Yeah.
If given their role in the process. So there were over 13,000 of those voters. And that process has traditionally not been as closely followed and closely observed, because remember, so those ballots are kept, at these special stations for a week, and then the EBC announced that there were going to be, I think it was 5 extra polling stations that were for special voters, where people could vote from anywhere. So let's say you were offshore, like say an offshore oil worker or something like that, or you're based in Tobago, because there was a station in Tobago, for example, so couldn't make it to Trinidad to vote for the election. They have these special ballots as well, so it's even more special than the other special voters. And so those stations were closed on Thursday, and then on Friday they were going to be count. So what you would do is you would count those ballots and sort them out. Well, not count it. You would sort it out. So put them because say someone could vote in Port of Spain at, let's say, the EBC office, but it was for, let's say, Sangre Grande, right, or Mayaro or something. So what they would have to do is they would have to open it up and sort out where those ballots are. Now, special voters, to have their names, you have to put the ballot in an envelope, and then that envelope goes into another envelope. And that larger envelope has the person's name, address, and signature. It's a sworn declaration that is their ballot. But you can identify the voter. You can't see who they voted for, but you could identify the voter. So the process on Friday, it's actually a 2-stage thing, because we had asked for a representative to be there, because traditionally we did not actually ask for a representative to be there. And so this time we wanted to make sure that we had somebody there. And it was denied by Fern Narcisco by telephone. It was just a telephone request we made to just confirm that our representative would be there as these boxes were opened.
Now, was that itself a violation of the rules, or what happened in the past?
Yeah. And so we issued a press release, and we asked, we demanded that she reverse the decision, because it's unlawful, and if she didn't, we would take whatever necessary legal action was required. And so she did reverse her decision, and so then we were allowed to view on Friday. When we went on Friday now, we saw that boxes had come in to be open, and it's supposed to be opened in the presence of, there were 5 political parties there. So because we not only asked for our party to observe the opening of the boxes, but all political parties to have the right to open. So they all came on Friday, and we saw 2 boxes open from San Fernando, which is one of the key corporations, very closely contested, and so they were opened. Our representative took a picture of the boxes, and when we told, it was the assistant chief elections officer Ms. O'Geese, when we told her about it, she didn't. I think she said that it was, that no, it was opened in front of everybody, but that was not the case. The picture, luckily, with the phones, it has timestamps, and so we saw it was opened before, and then she didn't have a satisfactory answer. So we actually wrote a press release on it, and when the EBC was asked about it, they said, well, they heard that, they saw a PR about it, but no written response had been forthcoming, or no written request. That is absolute. We made a real-time a complaint.
Is this likely to become an issue when the votes would have been tallied and finally? Because, as you say, the reporting in one of the papers today is that these two corporations are where the difference might come, San Fernando and San Grande.
Right. And not only that, they had the largest amount of special voters, 355. Every other one, except for one in Port of Spain, and I can't remember how much that had. That might have had like 100 and something. And every other station had like 10, 20, less than 10, in the tens, right? And this one had 355, and this is the one that was open. So the response was quite dismissive, and then they said, well, they didn't receive a written letter. So we issued a written complaint because there's two issues. It's not only the boxes were opened, another one was that the ballots in Sangre Grande, which is another highly and hotly contested area, the ballots were not packaged properly, and you could see the names of the voters, how I described it to you there. So people could sort, seeing who the voters are. So we had that issue. So we wrote, the leader herself wrote the letter, delivered it to the EBC. And then today via the media, I'm not aware that a formal written response has been given as yet, but through the media, Narcissus Scope said everything is fine, it's not an issue, it doesn't need to be sealed, that just sounds absolutely.
So as far as you know, the party is going to hold on to this, regardless of what happens, because she's quoted in the paper here saying the broken seals were in fact part of a previous process utilized at the special polling station and was in no way part of the process being witnessed at Queen's Hall.
Yeah. So we are definitely going to follow up on this. But the most important thing is to observe all these things, to concentrate on the election process itself, and then we'll have to deal with the irregularities, and if we need to put in petitions or injunctions or anything of the sort. Because I see the NTA, the General Secretary of the NTA, also had a very serious complaint with pictures of ballot boxes being carried by a woman with 2 children, no police accompaniment, no security detail whatsoever, dropped it off at, I believe it was Mount Hope Community Center, and picked up another ballot box. It seemed like there was some exchange. There was no formal and legally constituted process was followed by that at all. It was quite disturbing. So I saw that they wrote for Narcissus Scope. There's also an issue of Prime Minister Rowley. I believe it was a picture of him in the Marabella polling booth. So there are these issues that we need to keep an eye on, and we need to follow up with, but we can't take our eye off the election tonight.
So what you're saying, what you're suggesting there is that there's some room for questions to be asked and answered when it's all done and dusted. But I think until we have some numbers, before we need to take a break, but just I think we have some numbers we could put up there. These are, we're told, are final in this section of the Arima Borough Corporation. Arima Central, Sheldon Garcia doing 776 votes compared to Nigel F. Moses of the UNC 535. Our understanding is that that's going to be the count. That's the final from that section. Arima Central, Sheldon Garcia with 776, and they moved. So Saeed Mohammed Lesefus West and La Romaine in the San Fernando Corporation, 191 to Rishi Balaram Singh for the UNC, 434. This is Marcus Gadari, 342 for the PNM in Marabella, South Vistabella, and Sasha T. Ali for the UNC, 347, a close race thus at this point. This is...
It came up earlier.
It had come up before. Sipario West Faizabad, first time we've seen from that part of the Deep South now. Kamaluddin Ghani for the PNM, 631. Jason Ali for the UNC, 781. Sipario West Faizabad in the Sipario Regional Corporation. This is election night coverage here, local government election night coverage here on WESN. We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us.
To you by The Home Store, Allen's Funeral Home, Tunapuna, The Original Richard's Bake and Shark, Harmony Villa Blanchisseries, and Fan Zone.
We exposed 5 strangers to KFC's delicious chicken to see if any time could be KFC time. And at the first bite, the party began. We repeated the experiment during the day, during business hours, on weekends, with sunshine, with rain, and it's confirmed. KFC's flavor makes anytime KFC time. KFC, it's finger licking good.
Let the Home Store turn your house into a home you love. Get everything you need to give your home that special look and feel. We offer household items, lawn and garden, paint center, hardware, plumbing, lighting and electrical, toys and storage solutions. 5 convenient locations: 6th Avenue Barataria, The Falls at Westmore, Pennywise Plaza Shoguanas, C3 Center Branch and C3 San Fernando. Check out our Facebook page for more information and come visit us today. The Home Store. Turn your house into a home you love.
You gave us the inspiration to be first. We gave you the solutions that put you first. You walked with us side by side, and we continued to serve you with pride. First Citizens celebrates with you 30 years of achieving dreams, shaping success stories, and painting brighter futures together. And together, we'll accomplish so much more. First Citizens, together, 30 and beyond.
Fan Zone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
On the next episode of Nicole Larson Live, Living in Victory every day.
One of the first steps is putting God in the midst of it, and He's going to direct you. Another tip would be making sure that your business is in line legally.
Didn't you have a worker?
Yes, I used to borrow a worker.
You used to borrow a worker. And then you said to him, why don't you purchase? Or she purchased. I just wait. Look now, man.
Things are changing around us at the drop of a hat. And technology continues to challenge us. But not only is technology challenging us, but the changes in the world, in our global environment, is also challenging us in a significant way.
Like a tree, you have survived every kind of harsh weather. To believe that you can flourish again after a major catastrophe may be difficult, but by the grace of God, you will flourish again like a palm tree.
An encore of Nicole Larson Live, Living in Victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up, Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to the program here on WESN. This is local government election night coverage here on the station. We have in the Zoom with us Dr. Kirk Mayhew, he's the Public Relations Officer of the UNC. Dr. Denise Soifat Angus, she's political leader of the party in Tobago, the Innovative Democratic Alliance. I think that I got it right. Nikolai Edwards, political leader of the Progressive Party. We have Bina Mahes. She is a correspondent for us for this evening for these proceedings. She's at the UNC headquarters in studio with us. We have a political pollster of very renowned, Mr. Derek Ramsamuj, and public citizen Tim Hamel-Smith. We've been joined in studio now by Minister Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal. She is the Minister in the Office of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, and she's also, more importantly, I would say, Field Officer for the Women's League, because in a lot of cases they say over the years, it's the Women's League, the women in the party who get the vote, who do the work in getting the vote out in times like these. We're happy she joined us. Ms. Sagram Singh Suklal, good to see you.
Thank you most sincerely, Andy, for having me on your show this afternoon. And of course, a pleasant good night to Trinidad and Tobago. You know.
All right, let me just ask you to hold the pony. I think we have someone coming in from the wherever the PNM
site of the longest running political entity in Trinidad and Tobago, and I am joined by the Minister of Communications, Mr. Simon de Nobrega, and Senator the Honorable Lawrence Hislop. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us on the show.
Now, first thing I want to ask is, of course, you guys, you're already sitting government. Usually that means that it's a little bit more of an uphill battle. It's a little bit more of a challenge. We've seen the campaigning going on in the last couple of weeks. Now that everything is over and hopefully the results are starting to come in, are you all satisfied with how things have gone so far?
Well, first of all, welcome back to Balize House, newly renovated Balize House. We're happy to have everyone here. We're expecting our supporters to come down as the results are tallied and finalized in the different districts and corporations. To answer your question, I think with the results that we've had so far, we are satisfied in our victories. We can announce point 14 returning to the People's National Movement, we can announce that the People's National Movement has retained our 3 seats in the Superior Borough Corporation. I can announce that in Diego Martin, we are seeing, at least in Diego Martin Central, we are seeing very positive results coming back in the 3 electoral districts that have councillors that are Diego Martin Central councillors. Montcoco Alice Glen, where I was once the councillor, has returned to the PNM. Lisa Richards Cole will be the councillor-elect there. So overall, the results are favourable to us, and I think that the overall mood here, Lawrence, is positive.
Now, the Prime Minister, he did campaign a lot on local government reform. Now, of course, various members of both political parties, well, all political parties, were on the campaign trail. To what extent do you think that that issue to focus on really was working for your campaign? Did the voters respond so far? Have you seen to local government reform, or are you still waiting to get the consensus nationally? Because the Prime Minister's statements implied he is waiting for the vote to see how this will move going forward.
Well, I think the Prime Minister and the party focus on local government issues. I think that was what our focus was. I think that the general consensus will be that we were the only party that was campaigning on local government issues in a local government election. And as far as that goes, I would have expected that the population would have responded to that as opposed to a negative campaign. And I think that that our focus on that is what has carried us thus far. And I think our focus on that is what will carry us to victory, overall victory in the local government election this year.
Now, Senator Slop, I don't know how much campaigning you've done. I assume it has been your fair share of, hitting the pavement. Of course, Tobago is not a part of the exciting events this time around. But in your experience, speaking to the people, has it been local government issues highlighted enough? Have their voices been heard? Because there a lot of talk from the opposition has been coming about national issues and maybe sidetracking what this election is supposed to be.
Well, you see, what we've recognized is that the opposition supported local government reform. And so just for the sake of them being the opposition, they had to find something else to campaign on. Because the PNM campaigned on local government reform, on bringing governance closer to the population. And so when the opposition couldn't fight that fight because they supported it, they had to look to other issues, fighting national issues in a local government election. And so I believe that the PNM has done its job in putting forward the reform issues and local government issues and what is important to the man on the ground, to the man in the street. And we just await the results because we've done the work.
And of course, just to ask you, Tobago has been using the model. In your experience, how badly needed do you think that Trinidad, the 14 municipalities, boroughs, cities need this sort of model now to move forward?
Well, I could ask you the question. When you make the comparison between what the Tobago House of Assembly has been able to deliver to the population of Tobago in comparison to what local government corporations have been able to deliver, you tell me which model is the better model?
Well, if we're judging by model, in theory, it would be the executive model. If we're talking about results, that's a whole different conversation to be had. If you understand
that, right? That's for a different time. But even with the model that the THA has, the results have borne fruit that model works. If it is done properly, it works. And so once we could get that fully implemented in Trinidad, in the 14 municipal corporations, I believe that it will redound to the benefit of the burgess in Trinidad.
Well, gentlemen, I'll end it there because, of course, like everyone else, we're waiting for more results to find out where the future lies, at least at this point in time in our nation's current events. So hopefully we'll be able to speak to you later on as more results come in.
Sure.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
No problem.
All right, and we're back to the studio with this.
All right, so that was Sean Michael Smaller at Ballot House. So it's open.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's certainly they had a music truck there this afternoon. So that's where the excitement is for the PNM.
Yeah, but the minister saying that the PNM campaigned on local government reform. but the UNC chose otherwise.
Well, I saw the word reform on a lot of their brochures, but that's about as much as I know about campaigning on that particular as a footing of what they presented. I think that in terms of national issues, I think they themselves, whether it was a response to the UNC or whether they themselves elicited it, I thought they put national issues, center at the forefront of their campaign as well. I didn't pick up that, other than the fact that was, on their brochure, it was marked reform.
Right, that was the Minister Simon de Namburger, and he's talking about going on to overall victory. Let me bring you in, Madam Minister Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal. I wanted to ask, so you are the field officer in the Women's League, and I had said when we introduced you minutes ago that from experience, from generations, it has always been said that the Women's League...
the engine room
of
the party.
Of the party.
Correct. Well, again, thank you for having me here. I just want to springboard off of what Mr. Hamel-Smith would have indicated. I do agree to the extent that, yes, local government reform was centerfold. It was center to our campaigning. But I do also agree with him whereby national issues were indeed also addressed during the length and breadth of our campaign, recognizing that ultimately national issues do impact on communities and will have an impact on local government. The reform, of course, took center stage because it was our effort to remind the population of how critical this reform is in order to improve, of course, the operations of regional corporations at both an administrative and at a financial level. So yes, we would have focused throughout the length and breadth of our campaign, especially when we went into the conversations with the Prime Minister segment or chapter of our campaigning. It was at that stage what you would have found is that national issues, because this is where the Prime Minister would have invited questions from the general population, and like every citizen is entitled to, there would be citizens who would have, of course, national concerns, which was an ample opportunity in which I believe the Prime Minister adequately addressed those concerns and those issues. So I just wanted to briefly springboard out of what Mr. Hamel-Smith would have indicated. But to answer your question, certainly the women, at least at the People's National Movement, has always been considered as the engine room. Women in our party are known from time immemorial. I mean, certainly as a younger, newer politician, they're the ones who have blazed the trail to allow persons like myself to run through. And our women, we see their role and function, particularly in the election day machinery and the canvassing and campaigning. So it's twofold. It's not the election day machinery. Our women are so critical, of course, in running the constituency offices, the regional offices, in this case, well, of course, the candidate offices and so on. But beyond that, for the length and breadth of our campaign, our women are the one who are out with our candidates campaigning and really and truly selling the PNM story. So, if I may just steal the opportunity to, of course, thank on behalf of the People's National Movement, all of our supporters are women who came out, women who have responsibilities in their home, mothers who are employed, but still took the time, to give of themselves free of charge, just for love of country and service.
So you're saying that the Women's League still retains, I suppose, the images of people like Elmina Clark-Allen and Jo Newell-Williams and Newell Donovan McDavidson.
Of course, and now we have Camille
Philip
Robinson-Regis and Lisa Morris-Julian, who, of course, do their part in empowering women in their own way, nurturing and mentoring. And if you might even look at the candidates who have offered themselves, I stand to be corrected, but there's a large majority of the PNM candidates are females, and that in itself shows that there's a place and a space for women to function and thrive really well within our party, within the structure of our party.
What is the sense in the Women's League about a female political leader of the party and a future female Prime Minister if the PNM retains office?
We have welcomed as a party a female president twice. So I'm sure I could speak for my colleagues when, of course, if that does indeed happen, it would be a celebration, not just for the People's National Movement, but it would also be a celebration for our country as well, for the country as well. So, I mean, we have already shown through our choices for presidency that we believe that women have what it takes to, stand in offices or sit in offices, of the highest order. And certainly, I mean, a political leader that is a female, why not?
Okay. Let's go back outside with our panelists in the Zoom. Let's come back to you, Nikolai Edwards. What are you saying at this point?
Well, definitely one of the issues that, and I'm so glad that we have the minister joining the panel as well, because I think it will be a good opportunity, if anything, for her to answer a question that I particularly had. And let me just say, of course, I have the utmost respect for her, and she's someone who I know is working in this space as a younger person involved in politics and really trying to push the envelope and making interesting and really applaudable, I think, progress in so doing. Now, the whole issue of local government reform. I had heard the minister with responsibility for local government really pegging the idea of local government reform taking place really as a consequence of the results that we would see coming out of the local government election. But my thing is that the government has already put, insofar as seeing the passage of the legislation, it's to the point where it can be enacted. We're 4 months away from the deadline. I think that the government had put on itself really with the additional year to put local government reform in place. When can we really see local government reform come into practice? And is it in fact pegged on the results? Because I think it would be a matter of councillors, aldermen having responsibility to respect the law. Because once it's fully enacted, it's fully proclaimed, they have to abide by the law. They don't have the opportunity to vote to change the legislation in country and so forth. But if you could, why haven't we been able to see that come fully on board as yet? And is it indeed a consequence of what takes place tonight?
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to Dr. Before we go there, I think we're getting a report now from the UNC headquarters where we have our correspondent Bina Mahes. Ms. Mahes, you're on. I think she has to catch up with the transmission. It's delayed a little bit. So Bina Mahes reporting for us from the
local government elections
UNC headquarters.
2023 came to a close just about 2.5 hours ago. Now we're the UNC headquarters at Merchant Surgeon Road in Chaguanas. The atmosphere at this point in time, it's a bit quiet, it's a bit slow. Slowly but surely a number of activists are coming in to show their support. We've seen some members of the OWTU as well come in. They're out and about. At this point in time, no officials are on the floor. At this point in time, of course, we are expecting them to come down just a bit after 9 p.m. When the more final results are expected to be due. So, like I said, it's quiet. Not much activists inside the building. Of course, we will take a walk in a bit outside and see what the atmosphere is like outside. No party mode as yet. Everything is just slow, a very slow pace, a very quiet pace here for the time being at the UNC's headquarters in Chaguanas.
All right, so that was Bina Mahes reporting for us from the UNC headquarters for these local government elections. The results coming in. Tim Smith, anything you want to chew on? That's far from.
Well, certainly the mood at the UNC camp really, as we saw the PNM, I thought it indicated that interview, they had themselves more in readiness to have a message come to us. I think that, the optics of that came across far better. here you had your reporter reporting from the camp, but there's nobody around that she could interview, and therefore it didn't give you the same vibe, I think, that came from the PNM camp. Of course, the night is young yet, but I don't know if that's an early signal of what the expectations are within the camps themselves. I got the sense of a certain confidence, if you like,
coming from the PNM.
Now, in fairness to the UNC, there was no UNC person to interview, so but that tells a tale as well.
Yeah, well, let me see. Let's see how Dr. Megu might think about that, might respond to that. You're following the discussion, Dr. Megu?
Yes. We haven't. Our officials have been all and remain at the polling divisions, at the ballot boxes and so forth, because we want to make sure, because of the irregularity that we've seen, that we are there while the counting is going on. We have our legal advisors roving around the areas, and so we want to make sure that everything is in order, because especially from what we've seen. And later on, when we are satisfied that, and we've observed the process, and if we have any queries to make, we've registered them live, real time, and plus in writing. Once that process is finished, we will be heading up to the headquarters after. But although the voting is over, the counting is really the very important part, and it's still going on. So as far as we are concerned, the election is still going on right now. It's not finished.
What is your view on the reporting in the papers today saying that this thing will be decided between Sangre Grande and San Fernando, and it just so happens that the special ballots that are now in the question come from San Fernando and Sangre Grande?
Yeah, well, that's exactly where we have our eyes set on in terms of making sure the process is free, fair, free from fear, and that all processes are followed. And so far, they have not been. So that's a very, very serious concern of ours. So we are looking into that right now, and so I just have to say that it is a concern. We are watching, but we are confident. Throughout the campaign, there's been a tremendous outpouring of energy, of dynamism, of unity. The response we've gotten on the ground everywhere has just been absolutely incredible. And so we look forward to the results tonight for that. But we always have to be vigilant, as the events in the past couple of days have shown. So we cannot let our eyes off, although we do remain absolutely confident.
Dr. Sir Angus, at this point, can you make any predictions? Proffer any?
Well, I can't.
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear you, and then we'll go to Dr. Sir Angus. All right, Dr. Denise Sir Angus.
Yeah, it's difficult for me to make any predictions at this point. I think we just have to wait and see how this plays out to the end. But I want to go back to the same question that Nikolai asked the senator, because that was in my mind too. Are we going to see the implementation of the local government reform in place such that in the next 3 years at the next local government election, we're not campaigning again on intent, but we're campaigning on the performance of the implementation? And so can we see that actually being executed in this 3 years, or is it going to be on for another term that it's yet again they're campaigning on the intent?
Yeah, we have to keep in mind, so we are scheduled to have general elections not too long from now. We late 2023 as it is, and those are supposed to happen in 2025, a year and plus to go, so that local government elections could probably be derailed in favor of.
Well, that could be. I mean, there is a 4-year window I think it's intended to have now for local government. So if you're in 23, that really takes you to 27. So, but of course, you need to implement the legislation to make it effective. And so I don't think, I do not think the government would take the chance of delaying a local government. I mean, the response from the Privy Council certainly must have been something of a hit for them in terms of the response here, that you can't try to and they, I mean, it seemed to me that the PNM speakers, as it were using all sorts of convoluted ways of trying to say why we won but we lost. If you add up the numbers on this side, when you get down to that, when you have to make those sort of excuses, you fall in my estimation anyhow. It would have been better if they took it on the chin and responded and affirmed that they would be doing, which they came around to doing ultimately, but why put up the facade that didn't work? Yeah. Didn't work for me.
Okay, Derek, we'll come back to you in a moment. Actually, we have some numbers that we can go forward at this point. This is Arima Northeast, and PNM's Kim Garcia doing, well, it's neck and neck here. Yeah, these numbers. Kim Garcia of the PNM, 632, and Jaizino Rigsby of the UNC, 623. Oh,
this came up earlier, didn't it?
Well, this one,
I mean, different numbers.
Yeah.
Those two.
But at least Mr. Garcia, it's a little bit ahead. Arlene Ramdeo of the PNM, 1,097 versus Chanel Roberts of the UNC, 950, and that is Erin. That is part of the bottom south of the country. Marabella East for the PNM, 1,015, Dave Paris and Kern Ramden, 1,304, 1304, and that is in the San Fernando City Corporation, Marabella East. Cedrus, that's in the Sipara Borough Corporation, the PNM's Anthony Von Gannis, 715, Shankar Tilak Singh, he's the incumbent there, 1,771, Patricia Gore for the PP, I think, 16. Montrose in the Chaguanas Borough Corporation, the PNM's Andel Paramsuk, now at 604, and Melissa Jarunanan of the UNC, 888. 141, that's the number of spaces, of seats to be taken in these local government elections. That is Otahiti Rusilak in the Sipara Regional Corporation. Curtis Karabai of the PNM, 1,310. Javed Mohammed of the UNC, 1,975. Their Clamps 1-0, Sipara Regional Corporation, the PNM's Kennedy Polidor, 802 versus Derek C. Boren of the UNC, 2,000. That's Sipara Regional Corporation, 1-0. In Glencoe, Goodwood, La Puerta for the PNM, 664, Amber Keynes, Marsha L. Walker of the UNC, 400. Melissa Latifan Khan, not yet on the board. In Kumutu Tamana, the PNM's Dave Rambarat, 790. Keon Sarup Singh for the UNC, 1989. Christopher Mathura, the THC, not yet on the board. And let's come back inside the Derek Ramson. What are you saying at this point?
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
What we're seeing is that the politics have not changed. It's the same traditional voting behavior pattern. Where the UNC is strong, they are still showing that they're strong. Where the PNM is strong, they're still being strong. The question tonight is going to be, how do we decide who wins this local government election? What we're seeing is a voting pattern that is maintaining the status quo. So are we going to walk away tonight with the PNM still being in control of San Fernando, although there may be some seat arrangements, or whether or not the PNM could be able to make inroads into the San Grande district? Outside of that, all we're seeing is an odd seat or two or voter bragging rights in a particular geographic space. So what we're seeing, this entire election may really be much to do about nothing, because at the end of the day, you're putting a local government reform that has yet to be clearly defined and worked out You have yet to have a proper debate between all the political parties. What type of local government reform do they need? We also have yet to see whether or not a referendum, the opposition using the local government as a referendum on the leadership of Dr. Rowley. At the end of the night, it may not have made much of a difference because the issues are not seen by the voting behavior pattern. You're seeing, or practically, the same thing. And I think that's the lesson tonight, whether or not either political parties have been able to motivate not only their base, but the crossover vote or the undecided voter. So for all the airtime that you've had, whether or not your ground machinery to convince people on the doorsteps was effective, yes or no?
Do you have a sense from your party's campaigning what Mr. Agram saying what the effort was from the party? Where did you all seek to put more emphasis? What do you want to capture?
Well, certainly when we would have entered into the local government election campaigning season, our eyes would have been on Sangre Grande South, Sangre Grande Northeast, Marabella with Marcus Girdari. We were also very hopeful with Lingua Princestown because of the candidate, his hold and his role in that community. Of course, we were looking at Cedras. We were hoping to make some inroads. We are hoping to make some inroads in Siparia and also inroads in Chaguanas. So that would have been some of the areas that we would have been hopeful where we could have had some further PNM intrusion. But of course, focusing on our base as well, because, again, springboarding off of the submissions that was just made, let's be real. Based on the voter statistics, based on the stats that has already been, that is before us, it is clear that we are seeing to a great extent that the status quo has been maintained. I believe it's only when the counting is completed and all the numbers are in, then as a party we will be able to assess if we were successful at all, as would have been alluded to previously, whether we were able to convince some undecided voters or even new voters in particular. I don't have the stats before me relative to how many new voters we have had, but one of our campaign strategy was also focusing on the new and young voters. And it is only really when we have all of the numbers that are in, we would be able to make in our post-mortem, be able to make that assessment. And certainly from that post-mortem, we would have to do a significant amount of introspection as to how are we really going. And I'll be very honest, I entering into, if I may just deviate a little bit, entering into politics for me, personally, from the household that I am from, personally, and being of East Indian heritage and all of that, it was about making a decision for choosing a political party whose principles, core principles and values is one that I aligned with, not simply voting or supporting based on my ethnicity. So for me personally, stepping into the fold and outrightly supporting the People's National Movement, for me as an individual and a citizen, was breaking the status quo to a great extent of what existed in my very own family. And entering into politics with that modus operandi and that mindset, in my own little way and in my own little, whenever I'm asked to make a contribution at a national level, my effort has always been to try to break that status quo. Because, and that is why, just as what have been stated previously, I myself, I want to see what the final results and numbers are, for us to then be able to internalize and assess, have we really started? Now, we may not have been, the reality is, I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day. And to change traditions and culture that has been in existence for centuries, it is going to perhaps take centuries to change that culture, but it has to begin somewhere. And I think by assessing those numbers, it's a good place to start. And for us to really be able to determine, have we been able to make those on both sides, whether it's the UNC, whether it's the PNM, whether it's the NTA, whatever parties, to see whether or not we are really able to break that status quo where we have citizens who now begin to vote on issues and see beyond race and ethnicity.
So the question is whether or not this local government tells us how far we are from influencing the Gen Z population. Let's be clear. We are the older people in this society right now. The Gen Z population think differently, you communicate differently. What is important to them is much more real when it comes to their own wealth creation. What we're seeing here is perhaps older generational voters sticking to the norm and the campaign styles of both parties, not inspiring new voters, first-time voters, the Gen Z voters. And that grouping is going to be critical in your next general elections for the marginal constituencies of St. Joseph, of San Fernando West, and of Tanapuna, for example.
You think they would stay with these two established parties, or they may look for other avenues to do that?
Well, the two established parties may probably have to adapt and adjust their own campaign style and their own political rhetoric and how they campaign and how they communicate. You only have 30 seconds to sell a message. You don't have a message to be sold in a song. Yes, but that's your dominant voter.
Correct.
Yeah, I want to come back to you, Ms. Samuel, on something you said to Sagram Singh, the choice you made, which may have ruffled some feathers in your family circles. And so we come back to that in a little bit. I think we have some numbers moving the process along. Let's see them come up, and we'll tell you what they are. We seem to have some delay with the bringing of the numbers. But if we go back to your point, one of the points you made earlier was that you were putting some focus on CDRUS, and that's where Mr. Chanka, what's his name, is. And I'll come back to that to see how impregnable he might be, and if you're trying to break that. But in the meantime, Enterprise North and Esmeralda, that's in the Chaguanas Borough Corporation, Lisa Holder for the PNM is doing 1,366 versus Justin Stewart for the UNC, 1,478. Enterprise North Esmeralda. In Kokal, Mafeking, the PNM's Imran Ali, 599 to the Renel A. Kisun of the UNC, 971. I'm sure it's not the Imran Ali I know, but he's an attorney who used to be a reporter. The Neil Rain for the PNM, this is Claxton Bay Point up here at 1102, and Shazida N. Khan Mohammed for the UNC, 2,236. Claxton Bay Point up here, an interesting place if we're talking about the ethnicities and the ethnic makeup and some parts of the constituency. In Rio Claro South, this is Mayaro, Rio Claro, in the regional corporation there. I think that's one of the new ones. That's one of the two new ones that came out between the last election and now. Rio Claro South, Jeron Mohammed for the PNM, 895. David T. Law for the UNC, 1,223. And this is Savanetta Point Lisas, again, Kuva Tabaki Talpara Regional Corporation. The PNM's Rajendra Gosine at 948 versus Ramchan Rajbal Maharaj at 2309. Ramchan Rajbal Maharaj, 2308 in fact. It was 948 for Rajendra Gosine. Come back inside now, going back to Ms. Renuka Sagaram Singh Sukla. So let's talk a little bit about the decision of the party to train your guns against Mr. what's his name down there in CDRUS?
In CDRUS, that's Anthony Von Ganesa.
In
CDRUS. Okay. Or you were talking about the Lingua Princestown.
No, what's his name? His name will come to mind, but he's in Cedrus in the Superior Corporation as well. Shankar Tilak Singh. So he's not that wasn't your focus.
No, I wouldn't say so. I think what we would have done is, of course, you again coming back with our focus would have been one of our focus in our campaign would have, of course, been selling the idea of local government reform and the improvements is what to bring to the 14 corporations. I think it would be. It's inaccurate for me to say at all or to suggest that our focus we looked at these areas that I would have identified as possible areas that we can make some significant inroads. And of course, what we would have had is members of parliament, folk or ministers of government, community activists playing their part and working with the relevant candidates in those areas. Of course, with a focus on our Gen Z population, our undecided voter population, with the hope that we would have been able to get some voters, those categories of voters, re-energize our base, because no doubt in all of the areas, in 141 areas, we would have a base. I mean, how big and significant the base is, that's another story. Yeah. But in every one for us to even be able to field 141 candidates, it shows that the PNM has a base in every single nook and cranny of Trinidad and Tobago. How strong or how significant, of course, that's another story. But certainly our focus, when I say we focus on these areas, it's not from the point that resources or efforts alone are going to be placed there, but those were the areas that, of course, we're hopeful, we were looking to see, okay, perhaps based on the nature of the candidate as well and what the candidate has to offer, and of course that anchored to our local government reform position, and then of course dealing with national issues as the campaign would have unfolded. Our hope was, of course, to bring, and make some inroads in those areas.
Forgive me, but do you think that by practicing the same type of political strategy and campaign strategy that the country has seen decade after decade would resonate with a younger type of voter, not just only in terms of age.
Correct.
And whether or not it bordered on being a boring campaign, because remember, some of the more mature members of the electorate have seen this before.
Right.
And you could actually sing the PNM mantra song, great is the PNM, as the case may be. And while it is good for branding, the question is whether that branding is sufficiently now relevant to give people with hope.
Yes.
Because that's what you're competing now.
Yeah.
You're competing now with the new ethos versus the traditional establishment. And maybe this is a good thing for the country to look at the political parties, look at the actors, look at the relevance of the political parties. Because one thing I want to add, and Andy started it, we still live in a very colonial society. The problems we have with our institutions is they are legacies of our colonial times. The PNM came from that stock, adapted along the way. But are they adapting fast enough? And this is the problem we're going to see tonight with the UNC, whether they are making any relevance to the East-West corridor and whether they are adapting as well. So tonight, it's one good thing to see the status quo. The question is, why have we failed to move forward?
And I think the results could determine to what extent your strategy worked on. Okay, Nikolai, Edwards had his hand up. Okay, Nikolai, go ahead. You have your hand up.
No, because I wanted to get to you a bit earlier on. But we talk about Gen Zs, we talk about parties really appealing to different demographics across Trinidad and Tobago. But what information or data do we really have to rely on when it comes to seeing if in fact progress had been made in some of those data sets that we're so interested in, and we discuss time after time again in media interviews and so forth. And what I'm really talking about is the idea of modernizing our electoral process and our electoral system, as a matter of fact. And what that means is that I know a lot of people complain about the whole idea, for instance, of you work in Port of Spain, you live in South or what have you, you want to vote, but you have to plan in a particular way in order to be able to cast your vote, because that 2 hours would not suffice, and it would mean for you getting up way earlier, but then it makes no sense because you already have to take a vehicle at 6 a.m. to get onto the highway. But my point is, an individual may very well be interested in the ability to cast their ballot in Port of Spain, not having to run back down to San Fernando just to vote. And why aren't we looking at things such as that and other ways of having the population interact with an electoral system? That's a wonderful way to get more interest in our electoral system. But even beyond that, exit polling, the idea of exit polling, I think would be so beneficial to political parties, to watchdogs, to commentators, political scientists, and the like, because it really gives us some information in terms of where a political party may be making some inroads, where a political party has lost some support, the new voters coming in, where have they cast their votes, and so forth. I think it is not a concept far-fetched or far removed from the minds of persons who are well aware that these systems exist in other parts of the world, and Trinidad and Tobago, for one reason or another, we can't seem to be able to benefit from the latest technology and so forth. And it really boils down to corruption and all of these different things, which I really don't care to get into right now. But the point is, we have available to us knowledge, information to develop our systems, our electoral systems, and those issues that are being spoken about in terms of the same way of doing the politics and whether or not it's resonating, those can in some way by this data should we modernize our electoral system.
Wait a second. Let me, okay, I'll come back to you, Derek. I just wanted, I thought I saw Dr. Surfat Angus nodding a little bit, and then I see Dr. Mayhew.
Yeah, the Prime Minister just arrived.
But if we could get just a little bit of a thought from both of you on that intervention. Let's start with you, Dr. Surfat Angus.
Well, I would love to see that put into place, because we all know that during the Tobago House of Assembly elections, we have a lot of Tobagonians who live in Trinidad, and it becomes a fiasco for them to get to Tobago to even vote. And we have even persons abroad who actually travel home from the United Kingdom and also from the United States and other places to actually vote in the Tobago House of Assembly elections. So it is something that perhaps we can look at and should look at, and therefore that would take away the issues of the perception of tampered with ballot boxes that are in the special voting, and it would certainly lift, our level of democracy, I would think, in the country, and encourage people to get involved in the voting process again. For too long, we have seen persons who, we have such large voters lists, and yet persons are not enthused to come out. Perhaps, doing something like that, we would increase the voter turnout across the board.
All right, Dr. May, we're going to have to, I'll come back to you. I'm told that there's somebody, a report standing by with us by the House. I see Sean Michael Stewart, Sean Michael Small. Sean?
Okay, you all ready? Just now, are we trying to touch base with respective studios?
All right, so we have Laura on the side, right? She's going to give us a statement. Laura. She's going to give us a statement with results now.
Waiting on everybody on the media outlets to be ready.
Yeah? No.
Sorry.
Not yet. Is he ready?
by the respective political parties. If there are seats that will be filled for 2019 to 2023, then we can say
I'll be standing by to go back to by the House where Ms. Laurel Nizamali Singh is preparing to make a statement. It sounds news, it looks newsworthy.
Good evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Once again,
it looks newsworthy. All right, so we're going back to Barnsley House now.
Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, who has actually come to this compound for the first time since we've had some work done to it, and we are very happy to be broadcasting here. We have some updates insofar as 2 municipalities are concerned. We can safely declare that we've retained all 6 seats in the Point Fortin Borough Corporation. I can give you the numbers if you wish. New Village, PNM 546. UNC 191, PEP 49, MHJ 45, Egypt PNM 674, NTA 211, PEP 94, Hollywood PNM 541, NTA 169. Hollywood was the district with 5 candidates. PEP 41, MSJ 30, and the independent candidate retained 57 votes. Capdeville, Fanny Village, PNM 504, NTA 292, and PEP 69. Teshe Guapo, PNM 581, NTA 180, PEP 59, and MSJ 89. We can also declare that we've retained all 12 seats in the Port of Spain City Corporation, the jewel in the PNM's crown, our capital city. The numbers are still coming in for that, but from all preliminary reports, we have retained all 12 seats. In the Arima Borough Corporation, our preliminary results for 6 electoral districts have come in so far. We are awaiting 1 more electoral district, and the PNM has retained those 6 so far, which includes Mr. Sheldon Fish Garcia, who was the UNC's candidate before, and he came back over to the PNM. So we are pleased to report that so far we have 6 of the seats. We are still awaiting counts from Marabella. We know we've won Springvale Paradise with Nigam Joseph. We've retained Pleasantville, and we've retained Monterey Post Navet with Nigel Coutier. Pleasantville is Robert Paris, and these are all experienced councillors, and we are waiting the results for the other regional corporations. San Juan Laventil looks very good so far. We have retained all of the seats that we have had in San Juan Laventil. We are waiting the counts for El Socorro and Aranguez, which are not traditionally seats that the PNM has won. We are also awaiting results from Chaguanas and from Siparia. As I said earlier, the PNM retained its 3 seats for the Siparia Borough Corporation that we've had down there, which are Erin, Palo Seco, and Brighton Destiny, and we are awaiting the other 6 results there so far. We expect to make some inroads in that constituency. In Mayaro, 2 seats we are keenly looking at, Mayaro South and Mayaro North, and we are awaiting the results of those so far. So those are the updates that we can provide for you so far, and as soon as we have anything else, we will let you know. And if you have any questions, we're available. If you have any questions, we are free to answer any questions at this time.
Ms. Laura, we saw the Prime Minister just come in. What's his mood like this evening?
Oh, well, he walked in. He was very pleasant to everybody when he came in here, but I think he's taken in the ambience. This is the first time that he's walked here. You would have come here today and you would have seen that we were actually finishing with some things here. So he has walked in, he stood back, he stood there for a little while, he looked up, and then he went inside. It's the first time he's gone into his office here as well. And so we're going to give him some time to acclimatize with Balize House. We plan to have our official opening within the coming weeks or so, and we look forward to welcoming you to our new Balize House. I will go back in and we will have some conversations with him, and you know, as he always does, he will come and make himself available to the members of the media and to speak to the national community.
And speaking of Balize House on location today, it's now after 9. Not many people, not many supporters in society.
Because we told our supporters to stay within their localities, within the 141, because we have been very clear that local government election is about being local and being indigenous in your electoral district. So all of our candidates have remained in their 141. We anticipate that when all the seats are counted, they will go together toward their campaign headquarters, and we anticipate to see Diego Martin, Port of Spain, and maybe San Juan Laventil here. But this is really our media command center, and whoever feels to come in can come by. But we've not encouraged candidates to come out here, because you know we've been talking about what local government reform is and making it very local to the people, and so it's about closer governance to your people, and we've encouraged our candidates to stay within their electoral districts.
Senator, any word on the Minister of Local Government on what time he will arrive?
He's in San Fernando. You know that San Fernando has the Minister of Local Government, the former Minister of Local Government, and they are in San Fernando right now. We did speak with them, and they were waiting on all of their final results before they come up here. Yes.
Sorry, just one question. A little earlier today, the UNC would have released some videos alleging inducements for votes. They did, in fact, call some names of some high-ranking PNM members. Do you all have you had sight of it, and any comment on that?
I did not see that, but I can safely say that nothing the UNC says is really to be taken seriously, particularly during an election time. We have seen wild accusations and press conferences that ballot boxes were tampered with. They continue to discredit the Elections and Boundaries Commission, which is one of the outstanding flagship independent institutions here. And therefore, I would dismiss completely anything coming from the UNC. As I said, I have not seen it, and even without seeing it, I dismiss it completely because that is not the style of the People's National Movement. We don't do that.
Thank you.
Yes?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Well, strong words there from Ms. Darwin. It's not our style to pay people to vote and so on.
Just wanted to add to the political leaders from San Fernando. His name slips me. Could you help me with this?
No, I'm from where? The
San Fernando, the young gentleman, the young gentleman.
Oh, Nikolai Edwards.
Sorry, my apologies.
Nikolai Edwards, yeah. Going
But
back to his point.
I think Nikolai is very, very correct. One of the challenges in this country is that of the funding of polls. It is deeply disappointed that no media house would seek it important to fund polls, or even where polls are very expensive tools of determining what people think. And as our society evolves and as the politics mature, we need to have more and more of instruments such as polls. The other thing we needed to look at is Instagram as a tool for political messaging that the younger population would have. Whereas in places like Canada, they use Twitter for more issue-based. In this country, they're now looking at Instagram. So the political communication style using new technology for the younger generation must be taken seriously. And the institutions such as the media and other government authorities, if they need to get their messages, have got to change the tool that they use.
But what do you think, what has happened over the years? Because it seems to me that political polling had become part of a staple of, the Ryan polls, and you had others who were doing some of it. What do you think, why do you think media houses have backed away from
Because one, what media houses want to do, and this is, let me go a little deeper into the media houses. There are too many reporters who have a political agenda, and the media houses allow these reporters to use them to put their agenda. And therefore, anything that is critical or that will create a result that is critical of party A or party B is frowned upon. Also, your media market is small, competitive, and perhaps collapsing. So they don't have the kind of space, financial space, right, to actually run these ads.
All right, I want to come back to you on that point because in my experience as a journalist, Derek, people accuse me of having a political agenda when I had never had any. And I know sometimes people because they don't agree with what you say or your comment that you have. I think Nikolai Edwards wants to take his leave and he wants to get in the last word. Nikolai? Probably. All right, but okay, let's stay with them out there. He probably has left his post there. He left with us for the time being. Dr. Mago, what do you make of some of what you've heard in the last 5-10 minutes?
Well, I mean, if we go with the issue of the young voter, I mean, and participation of younger people, obviously that's something very important to us. And I have to say that we have been very, very pleased with the amount of young people. If you just look at the candidates in these local government elections, the amount of young people, and from all races, from all ethnicities, it's been quite humbling. And not only that, I mean, we have been engaging in a lot of social media campaigning. And the amount of youth participation in that, the amount of TikToks. Now, a lot of times, these things cannot be shown on on traditional media outlets, sometimes because of language they might use and so forth. But that's the way they're expressing themselves, and that's the way they do express themselves, and that is their form of participation, and through these social media channels. And there is a lot. I think that if we just get wider than this particular narrow election discussion, I think the education system has really failed the people of this country in that respect. People don't know what the role of an MP actually is, as opposed to a minister or as opposed to a councillor. And people get it mixed, and people who should know better get it mixed up all the time. An MP is part of the legislature, not part of the executive, and the executive has two levels. But these sorts of things, people don't understand, and then there's a general cynicism that sort of passes as political analysis very often, kind of discouraging people to get involved in the process at all. But despite that, we really have seen a huge influx of young people into the party, into the campaign, and we're very encouraged by that, and we hope to keep pushing forward with that. Of course, we will always be looking at whatever electoral strategies and whatnot that we need to change or alter, and maybe even in terms of the voting process. I'm not sure, but I think people also have to be from school age have a better civics education, and that comes from Ministry of Education curriculum thing as well.
Well, I'm not sure if they even teach civics anymore in schools that they used to. When I was in high school, that was a subject to be taken. Dr. Surafat Angus, you have thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think we need a revamp of our whole education system. Right now, our education system is failing our young people, and we are turning out more young people who can't find themselves in society, who seem to be lost, who end up on the street corners and end up in trouble. And the education system has to take some responsibility for that. We have young people who, when they go into school, their high school, they want to learn a trade, but yet we wait until they finish 5 years of wasting their lives to failing out. Now tell them, okay, now that you failed out of school, you can go learn a trade. And that has to change. We also have to bring back the civic that we are teaching in schools, because I think it's because of the lack of that it also has contributed to the low voter turnout that we are seeing over the years. And that has to be addressed. The mere fact that we just finished the Commonwealth Games, and whilst we look good in infrastructure, yes, and we, congrats to those few wins that we got across the board, we really got a licking. And when you look at the caliber of the athletes who are coming from different teams, we're not looking at the individual, but we're looking at teams. To our teams, you could tell that there was a significant difference in physique, in talent, in the way they approach the game psychologically. And it tells us that we are still into sports as a hobby and not sports as a career. And I think the time has come for us to create sporting academies where we have young people who start earlier in their development to focus and really choose a career in a sport and really give them that full support. We have children who have talent, but they're struggling. Parents are struggling to feed their children, struggling to get them the equipment. I mean, that should not be. If the government sees that a young person has that level of potential, then we have to invest in that young person. If not, that person ends up being a high school dropout many of the times and not making, themselves to be further on in their lives or fulfilling their purpose. And so again, we see where we can do that. It's time for us to streamline the education system and not just focus on straight academia, but to be able to give our young people the opportunity to develop in different ways. Even those in the cultural art forms, let us choose from early what those careers need to be, and it's not just focus on the academia. Give the young people choice and create a more holistic and relevant education system to our local Caribbean focus. And our education system should be aligned with the way we want to produce.
Dr. Surface, I guess I want you to hold a point that we need to go. We're going to Bina Mahes, who is at the UNC headquarters for us. Bina Mahes, with Khadija Amin, one of the members of the Tunapuna Regional Corporation. Ms. Mahes?
The crowd is slowly building. A number of officials, a number of MPs are here, and we are quite fortunate tonight to have with us the St. Augustine Member of Parliament and Shadow Minister of Local Government and Rural Development, of course, Ms. Khadija Amin. Ms. Amin, thank you so much for joining us here tonight on WESN. So we understand that the UNC, we heard you before, the UNC would have declared 7 regional corporations as well. Can you give us a brief idea as what's taking place on the ground right now?
Certainly, I find it interesting that even the seats where we did not win, we have made significant inroads. Right. In several areas where we did not win some seats for many years, we have won seats. So, for instance, in Sandy Grande, we're able to win back the seats we do have, and we also won an additional seat. So we have the Valencia West seat coming in with Neil De Silva. That is an additional seat. So the UNC has moved from the PNM being in charge of that Sandy Grande Corporation. We had won 4 seats and then they won 4 seats. Right. Then we won 5 and they had 3. So I understand we have won 7 seats this time. Right. So it is really interesting, and it speaks to the quality of representation from the UNC, people being fed up of the PNM. We will continue to work and represent people, but in every region we have seen an increase. We have won back our seat in San Fernando City, where the UNC councillor across the floor to the PNM. The UNC candidate for that area, Ms. Sasha Ali, has won that seat. We congratulate her. We also have news coming in that Macmillan has won his seat, John Michael Ali Bokas. We are waiting for the final results, but that is an interesting city and an interesting municipality to watch. We have won, of course, Shogunas Borough. We have retained this Couva. We have retained Saparia, Pinal Devi Mayaro. So we are just waiting to get some more results, but so far it is very positive for the UNC.
Right, and earlier today, Ms. Amin, we received reports that the political leader, Mrs. Kamala Bissassa, she was a bit concerned because of some discrepancies. Has that been laid to rest now?
Oh no, these are things that we will pursue, that the party will pursue. There are some things that may require a legal challenge. There are some things that may require an investigation, a proper investigation. We still have an issue with the special voters, special ballot boxes, where there were some discrepancies and the EBC has been asked to properly investigate it. Today we had a number of situations with irregularities. We had situations with the PNM canvassing, intimidating voters. Some of those were brought to the attention of returning officers. So those are situations that, of course, we would have made official reports there. And I think it's important for voters not to be intimidated at all when they go to the polls. So we fought a clean election. We ran a clean campaign. We today in all our operations, we were very clean. We were on the ground and focused on the job. We have fantastic candidates, and I think our political leader led the campaign in a way that was very people-centered, and that showed in the results.
Great. And final question, I don't want to keep it back, I know it's a long night ahead. So we have reports there was a lower than usual turnout this year for the LGE. I mean, it's not a big surprise, but LGE 2023 was supposed to be or described as a prelude to what's coming up in 2025. How does the UNC feel seeing that there's new support, there's full support, there's a grand atmosphere? Is this a sign for what's to come in the next 2 years?
I think it is an indication to the population of what is possible. I think it is an indication to the people of this country of the power of the people standing up, and that we should not take it for granted that certain areas are PNM control or PNM strongholds. People have the power to make a difference. What I can tell you is that when we see the final results, we can compare the turnout in local government elections, not only in Trinidad, and internationally as well. Municipal elections usually have a lower voter turnout. More people vote for federal elections and national elections. That is customary throughout the world. I think because of the type of campaign that Kamla Persad-Bissessar ran, you saw more interest in local government. Local government is not just about collecting garbage and cleaning drains. The political leaders spoke about local government being able to create secure communities, being able to create local economic development, support small and micro entrepreneurs, make safer playgrounds, safer schools, create employment. Creating employment, joblessness, unemployment, those are serious issues that the population find to be important. And whereas previously and what traditional campaigns for local government would not focus on these because they would be considered, and even the Prime Minister said those are national issues. But I think Kamla Persad-Bissessar in her campaign was able to demonstrate how these issues that are very relevant to the population, that how local government can provide solutions. And I think that generated a lot of interest from people, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ms. Amin. So with us just now, of course, the St. Augustine MP, Ms. Khadija Amin, and Ms. Amin is also the Shadow for Local Government and Rural Development. Back to you in studio, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you very much, Sabina. Well, back in studio here, what do you make of
Well, I mean, if one is to believe the results as Khadija Amin has stated them, they suggest that I think it would turn out to be 5-7 in favor of the UNC. Though I don't know. I don't know if it's coming from a partisan source, yes. And therefore we'll have to wait until we have real results in. But it could be indicating that. What I did find is in the central area, I don't have anything to compare it to in terms of the previous local election, but I did get the sense that the PNM had gained ground in that central area, and the results were closer. They were losing it, but the results were closer than I expected.
Chaguanas and
Couva Talparo. I thought that
Tabaki Talparo and so on.
We talked earlier about elections, getting more participation. And as in Estonia, we should be looking to, voting online. That is, but to do that, you have other things in advance. You have to have IDs, a national ID system to work. Of course, you need to make it secure, but certainly participation, I think, would improve dramatically. I think we talked about the education system. From our perspective, there's a necessity for education really to start from birth. If in that first 3-year window, from birth to 3 years, if you don't get that right, nothing else works. So you're starting too late if you start in a primary school or secondary school. That first 3 years, people say, well, there's such a difference between the haves and the have-nots in terms of but what people who have the resources to do is to, in fact, send their kids to nurseries where they get a lot of interaction, they get toys, developmental toys that they play with, they get a certain bonding with another adult, and that creates an environment so that the time they reach the primary school, they're so much more advanced, and we lose that in our depressed communities, if you like. We need to give them that advantage, that opportunity.
Yeah, but the point that one of those persons making about what has happened, the absence, the removal of ethics from
right. And so we believe,
it's civics in fact.
You need character education, which involves civics, which involves values. And it's unfortunate that, we started off at independence, tolerance, production, discipline. But in fact, all you do is dust it off every year, Nobody, and for that to take root, you needed to bring it in at the very bottom level and have that as part of the very values and character education. What do you perceive yourself as a Trinidadian to be or Tobagonian to be?
Yeah.
Is so important.
This really point, Derek, because I told we have some numbers they want to put up on the screen. What the latest is. This is in Port of Spain, the Port of Spain City Corporation. This is the Belmont North and West district. Maluya Born for the PNM, 555, as opposed to Chantal Avia Subero for the UNC, 173. Wow, I think didn't Laurel Lizamali Singh say that Port of Spain is all but done and dusted for
it's not unexpected.
Exactly. And this is Belmont South, just to tell you the numbers that are coming. 438 for Raphael Bonds for the PNM, as opposed to 119 for Eric Blackman. So I think those are the numbers that fill out the story. It says that the Port of Spain, the PNM has retained the Port of Spain Corporation. Clint Batiste and East Rye River, 410 to Catherine Perry for the UNC, 126. Those are the numbers that tell the story about the Port of Spain retaining, the PNM retaining the Port of Spain Corporation. In North Port of Spain, Abena Hartley for the PNM, 537 versus Darren Garner for the UNC, 94. What else is there?
What's the PDP in some of those? All right. So
that's irrelevant.
The PEP and
that's really irrelevant.
Esther Sylvester, Sinaz River Central is called the number there for the PNM. Esther Sylvester for the PNM, 46. Kenny Lee, 72 and 87. We're going to the PNM, the Balize House for another.
All updates. One, we are pleased to report that we seem to have retained San Fernando City Corporation, but we are awaiting the final count. We have maintained Koki Turuba from preliminary reports with a very narrow margin. As per usual, the candidate Teresa Lynch Haddad would have won that seat by one vote in the past. So a margin just around 50, maybe a little less. But more importantly, it is now 9:30 and Prime Minister Dr. Rowley will address you in exactly half hour. So he will be out here at 10 o'clock to speak with all of you, to answer your questions and to speak with the nation. Yes? Okay. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
And the situation with Koki Turuba, if what we're hearing is the PNM have retained it. And what we're also hearing that the Marabella South Vistabella has also been retained by the UNC, albeit by a very narrow margin. It tells you about the status quo of our politics. But I want to shift a bit. This is supposed to be about local government reform. There are two elements of it that is still missing. One, in places like Belize, local government elections are fixed date within the Constitution. So this presents an opportunity, if you want to improve governance at the local government level, that we go back to the drawing board and have a meaningful debate, not about the political parties, but also about all the stakeholders, to bring a better level of governance. And the second thing is local government value for money at this point in time? Are we spending so much revenue and resources for local government, and are we getting value for money? And that's the second thing, because you have central government, you have the local government elements, you have the special purpose companies, and we still have potholes on our roads, right? So that's what I'm saying. We need to go back and see how we bring value.
Are we duplicating?
Triplicating and keeping a large public sector employment.
Yeah. So you think that public local government elections might be dispensable?
Well, we don't know what the reforms are. Have we done a case? You see, part of this is the legacy of our colonialism, because the local government was part, as they said, coming out of the colonial system of how you manage your own affairs while you're governed by the mother country, the mother colony. And therefore, if you want to bring local government reform, why are we putting another layer? Because then we have THA on top of that as well. So work out our monthly bill for public services just on salaries and the duplication, and what value for money are we getting? And therefore, I thought the UNC had an opportunity as they began to talk about the seats being disproportionate, where in certain parts of the country you have larger numbers for particular larger numbers of voters. And therefore, we would have been led to believe that if they had an interest in better governance, they would not wait till after the elections to complain about it. They should have been participating in the process. So just like how in the general elections there is a number of voters each constituency must have, and you can't deviate too much above or below. Likewise in the local government. So there is local government reform, may or may not be needed. It just depends on the kinds of conversations we've had, because that is a tool of political patronage.
Local government elections, you say?
Yes, local government is a tool of political patronage. Look at the aldermen. Who decided who would have been put on the list of aldermen? You didn't vote for them. A political leader decided who goes where at the end of the day in real politics.
But isn't it the same thing with the Senate? I mean,
and that's the point I am making to you. So why would you want, you have the Senate that basically have a different type of argument, and you model that, right? You cut and paste that and put that in there. Did anybody really ask what is the rationale for these aldermen, except that of influencing political support if you're in a tight situation for political control? How is that improving our governance? It makes it easy for the political parties and their leadership to manipulate the situation, right? Or say, it wasn't me, I didn't decide.
You're calling for a whole sort of overhaul.
The reality is, if we're going to talk about reform, then let's do it properly, not piecemeal.
But if you took the politics, because when you bring the politics into it, you only get a polarization. But what you should conduct is a cost-benefit analysis. Then you know, does this work? Do we get value for money? And that's what you need to conduct. And that has nothing to do with whether you're PNM, UNC, or anything else.
Especially if you want to put the property tax in and put a fair amount of money in people's hand to utilize for resources.
Well, if you want to, I mean, that is to come, and these elections will determine how it comes and so on and so on.
No, I'm just listening to the conversation relative to the overhaul of the whole local government structure, and I'm laughing to myself because, you know, my first degree was in history, so I totally hear Mr. Ramsamudge when he speaks from a historical perspective of course, the emergence of local government and its intention, especially during colonial times. And of course, his submission and senior here, his submission relative to you know, the requirement for an entire overhaul and using Belize as a comparator. But of course, we know the lawyer in me now, apart from just the partial historian, to bring about such change would require a special majority in our parliament. And the unfortunate reality of the climate and sitting as a parliamentarian, especially as it relates to those bills that require a special majority, are we as central government going to have, even if there is the political will, to review, because I've often heard in the public domain, and especially coming from talk shows like this, you know, the talk about political will, I've often heard concerns about a piecemeal approach to the making of legislation. But because of where I sit now and the office in which I sit in, I can now totally understand why sometimes when it comes to bringing legislation to the parliament, I will never say it's a piecemeal approach, but why a particular approach has to be taken, because you're simply not going to get that special majority support.
Why can't we horse trade? Why can't we just expose the members of parliament who are only doing what is in their personal interest or their party's interest as opposed to that of the people's interest?
I can't say that that has not been done, because throughout the length and breadth, I will dispute that, because throughout the length and breadth of our debates, so for example, and there's a history of litigation that we have taken to the parliament that carried a special majority. Those same bills failed and we returned to the parliament. According to the UNC's position, the opposition's position, we have watered down the bill, or we have come with a simple majority position to pass those bills, a piecemeal approach we have taken. But we have had no other choice as a government, because you simply cannot get the support of the opposition. And to answer your question, Mr. Ramsey, how, Derek, most respectfully, whether we're the government or not, how are we going to, the opposition themselves or any member following, whether it's the independent bench or the opposition bench, and more so the government bench, we need to understand our responsibility to our nation. How are you going to train someone? Most respectfully, how are we as a government, if we bring a special majority bill, is it our responsibility to train the opposition to understand that they must put country first and not party first? And they must not put politics first?
Train the population. Start first with training the population, because it's the population at times who will keep the status quo, as opposed to understand why the status quo needs to be changed, right? And all I do understand the problems of governance.
That will take a couple of lifetimes.
Yes.
It's such a dynamic discussion. You mentioned you brought Tobago into it, and so I wanted to get a comment from Dr. Angus, but first. Dr. Megu, you wanted to get in on this?
Absolutely. I mean, that narrative by Minister Renuka Sagram Singh is totally false. The UNC has supported at least 14 bills that needed special majority. I mean, the whole point of a special majority bill is that you need it when you are interfering with people's constitutional rights and so forth. And so that's why it's there. There's nothing, and the PNM when they were in opposition also, they did not vote for 7 pieces of special majority legislation as well, but I mean so that narrative is completely false. We support good legislation when it's there. So, but if we return to the issue of local government, certainly when the PP government was in power, one of the most important things we did was reintroduce proportional representation for the first time. There's been calls since 1962, and then later on in the Wooding Commission, and the PNM have been totally against that. But we see how proportional representation even helps the PNM. It helps everybody because it's a fairer voting system. We brought in legislation about fixed election dates, about giving each MP, no matter what party they came from, $10 million to work in their areas and so forth. These pieces of legislation were tabled, but they didn't get through for one reason or other. But and this is part of the politics. We live in a democracy. We don't live in a dictatorship, and one has to convince one's colleagues, one has to convince the population, and obviously, I mean, the constitutional reform is something I've been advocating and working on personally for decades as well. There are many changes that need to be done, and it's something that we must keep working on, and we must keep moving toward. But so the issue of local government reform, and this local government reform does not even touch the most important things that are needed in local government reform, which is equity, first of all. So these are some of the issues, but it is law already. So it's been a ridiculous campaign to say that vote, local government reform has been passed. It is the law. These elections have nothing to do with the implementation. It's been law since July last year, and the government, the PNM government, just has not implemented it. The only part they implemented was when they wanted to postpone the election for a year, but then we had to take them to the Privy Council. So the law is there to be implemented. It is, they have some things in it which are decent, but it does not at all touch the most important aspects that need to be reformed. And the population, even in, I even saw it in the PNM conversations, when the population were asking questions, the ordinary supporters, the ordinary people, the ordinary citizens, they were the national issues of youth, of joblessness, of crime, of infrastructure. These are the things they were asking about, because this is really
not essentially local government issues and questions. And because he talked about, he put Tobago in this mix, Dr. Soifat Angus, this issue about whether we need to have a Tobago House of Assembly. I'm interpreting what you say to say that we have to bring back all these things under consideration, right? Whether or not, what's the need for a Tobago House of Assembly? Because the decades have been spent campaigning for it. It came into being, and some people in Tobago now are probably ruining where you are.
Well, clearly, the country is the country of Trinidad and Tobago, which constitutes the island of Tobago and the island of Trinidad. And so to question if we even need a Tobago House of Assembly is, a question we should not even consider, because it is absolutely necessary to ensure that the water that we are divided by does not cause us, to be treated any way unfairly in terms of delivery of services, and to do what we have to do in Tobago in terms of our own governance. So it may be a question for the other parts of the country, but certainly not where Tobago is considered. In fact, we have that Tobago bill, which is at the door of Parliament, where we are advocating for greater autonomy of Tobago. And that bill right now, I personally consider to be quite inadequate to treat with what we are experiencing in the Tobago House of Assembly right now. It is the same bill that has caused just yesterday for Ali to talk about there's a war between Tobago and Trinidad, which is not a way I subscribe to inside of us dealing with our issues and our relationship between Tobago and Trinidad. But clearly the Tobago House of Assembly bill for greater autonomy is absolutely necessary, but the bill has to be reviewed in terms of how we legislate the framework for greater transparency and accountability inside of the Tobago House of Assembly, which we are not seeing now. Right now, the people have no powers inside of the Assembly, and that has to be addressed if we have to go forward in the spirit of democracy and ensuring that the people have the power. We need to have more voices in there for them to be heard, and not just the voice of the majority of 13 shouting over 2 and whatever they say goes. So that has to be changed, especially in light of Tobago getting greater powers over time. So the bill has to be reviewed, and it must be passed after the review.
So what can you tell us about what the status of it is now? Where is it on the way to being reviewed, if at all?
Well, it's currently in Parliament right now. I think it's still with one of the committees, and I know that many Tobagonians, including myself, have concerns with a few areas still within the bill. The bill, the bill that was approved by 500 and more Tobagonians signing off on the bill that went to Trinidad in 2015, I believe, or 2016, it's not the same type of bill that is there now. It has been diluted, and there are areas that we see now that are lacking given the performance of this current administration in the House. So the bill needs to be tightened.
Yeah, I think the last time she spoke, Dr. Maria Dillon Rennie was calling for action to be placed to treat with it. That's so?
Yes. Yes. So it is something that we are requesting must be out for review, and it is something that we are currently looking at it with in the IDA, having consultations with various persons on it, and would be putting forward something shortly.
But just for the record on that particular bill, I feel straight because it actually was just an issue I dealt with today. From the Hansard, the last debate of this bill was actually in June. It was on June 30th, 2021 in the House of Representatives. And interestingly, though, I mean, springboarding over what, well, I heard the comments made by Mr. Mayhew, but interestingly, the opposition did not show up for that debate. And he can revert to the Hansard and the records that would have reflected that on June 30th, 2021 in the House of Representatives, there was no opposition presence. And therefore,
of that itself, or was it that the strike against?
Well, of course, there are always issues, and I, of course, will not want to misquote the Hansard at this stage, but thereafter, that debate that took place on the 30th of June 2021 in the House of Representatives, the stage at which the bill is at now, it is to be carried to the Senate, for, of course, further review and debate, and certainly coming out of what the Honourable Doctor would have just her submissions. Certainly, I cannot say at all that the government has not acknowledged that we will be required to, of course, continue consultation and continue discussions and conversations with the people, the citizens of Tobago, agreeing with her that, of course, we are the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Tobago is an equal part in this partnership, and certainly those consultations would have to continue. But that's just for the record from the Hansard, where the Tobago self-government bill is concerned.
All right, so you have your hand up electronically.
Yes. To respond to Minister Sargam Singh's well, the opposition stood with the people of Tobago, who were absolutely dissatisfied with that bill, and which the PNM had intended to ram down the throats of the people of Tobago. And our position has always been that proper consultation with the THA and the present government in the THA was necessary, because they are not in support of that bill as it stands right now. And so that has been our position, to be in the parliament, in the central parliament, to represent the position that the people of Tobago need to be properly consulted.
Most respectfully, Mr. Mayhew, and most respectfully to the members of this panel, I think that is the highest level of irresponsibility of any member of parliament to suggest that because I am not in support, because I'm standing in support of the people of Tobago, I'm just not showing up. If you stand in support of the people of Tobago, then use that soapbox that the Parliament of Trinidad provides you with to provide a voice. Be the voice for the voiceless. If you honestly believe that the Tobagonians were being, the bill was being rammed down, that the bill was being rammed down, what I would have believed that a responsible, genuinely a position that is genuinely concerned, what they would have done is use the opportunity when the debate came up, come to the parliament, field their speakers, and present a quality representation on behalf of the people of Trinidad and on behalf of Tobago. But the Hansard reflected that there was an absence. There was an absence on the 30th.
So what is there's a stalemate on it? So
if you can remember it.
So why you think that? What is your thinking about why there's a stalemate on it, Dr. Mayego? So it's not going anywhere. Why?
The stalemate was that the PDP in Tobago felt that it did not address the issue. Again, like local government, for instance, when the PNM talk about the local government reform modeling themselves on the THA, that is absolutely false. I mean, the THA, one, is entrenched in the Constitution. Two, has a guaranteed budget of between 4.03 and 6.9% of the budget. So that's guaranteed. That's not in the local government.
And for years, there was a dispute as to how much they should get, given what I spent years reporting on it, which was something was called the Simangal draft, and then it moved to another draft, and so on, to agree on that figure and so on.
Right. You're talking about in 1980, right? And then I'm talking about 1996 when it was entrenched in the Constitution afterward, and then also they have a whole, they have a Secretary of Health, they have a Secretary of Tourism, they have a whole series of secretaries as well. That's not in this local government.
But that's for the Executive Council. The purpose of while we will not have secretaries of health and named secretaries, the purpose of the reform was that is the intent of the Executive Council that is proposed or is actually legislated.
If it's the intent, why isn't it there? I mean, it's a written law.
And the sad part about this is that this bill too was debated in the Parliament, and the Hansard will reflect that not one opposition senator would have made said submission. So you see, it goes back again. When are we as a people really, when we are really? I don't want, because I know the position of the PNM is that we've always put.
With serious consultation.
I think it's about time that we see people before party. Perhaps that is.
All right, I'm Dr.
And this is where Tobago has always felt that we are just a political football being kicked backward and forward in Trinidad while we suffer in Tobago, and we are not being heard. And we need to be heard. We deserve to be heard, and this is where we expect both parties in Trinidad to come together to give Tobago what we want.
Exactly, and it's not this bill.
All right, thank you very much. So let's see what we could make of what has happened in Trinidad today. Then, where we the reporting was that, or the political sort of analysis was that the thing will be decided based on what happens in Sangre Grande and based on what happens in San Fernando.
Issues about San Fernando. The UNC said we want San Fernando.
Correct.
Exactly.
I don't know where we are.
No
one. I did condition what my statements about, providing what we say here is accurate. So we're going to have a long night, is it?
And I understand, Prime Minister, I recall Mr. Lazama Leasing said the Prime Minister would address in about 5 minutes' time.
At 10 o'clock, well, that's what they say. We're not sure if it will happen until it happens. We see. But so at this point, we're not sure what has happened with who's retained what and so on.
I don't think that's correct, Again, here, we're getting mixed up here. I believe that from what the PNM said, that they retained San Fernando.
Yeah, I think this is what Ms. Lizama Leasing says.
And what was said by the UNC was they probably retained Sangre Grande.
I thought I heard them say Sangre Grande
what was said was that Marabella West was taken in San Fernando, but not we didn't declare the entire corporation, but Marabella West, which was a PNM, has been taken by Macamillion. So that's what we said in San Fernando. In Grande, what it was that we increased by 2 seats, I believe it was.
So
San Fernando, we didn't declare San Fernando, but we declared Marabella West, which we overturned.
That's the UNC declaring Marabella West.
So at this point, it remains 7-7?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm not sure. I haven't heard from the EBC yet. So, but from what Khadija Amin was saying, which I believe is from the EBC, but we can verify that. But what she did say was at Macmillan, John Michael Ali Bocas.
But that only puts it that will just put you on 5-4.
Correct.
Right.
So she did not say we took San Fernando.
Right, because Koke Taruba, I believe, was held.
That's right.
And if the PNM kept Koke Taruba, and what you're saying, Dr. Mago, is true, then I believe it's the PNM holding San Fernando 5-4.
Right, and what happens with Sangre Grande then? So Sangre Grande remains as it was, so that there's been no change in the overall figures.
Yes, so it's the same 7-7. Same status quo.
So you have
politics.
a polarized country, isn't that what it's telling you? Yeah. And the real difficulty with that is that when you have a polarized country where, therefore, whoever's in government want to go in one direction, the next party will pull in the opposite direction. And no country, unless you have a critical mass of people willing to follow a single vision, no country can prosper. So we're really not in a good place.
And part of the problem is we have basically an electorate that is not motivated. And what is also going to be interested is the actual implementation of some of the local government reforms, what their respective governing bodies at the local government is going to do. Is the UNC corporations going to implement the local government reforms, right? And that's going to be critical.
That's a structure. That's the law. There's not.
So there's no political.
That's not the issue. That is already the law. So that's what's there. That's,
Dr. Mago,
that's not even a question.
So Dr. Mago, so there's no. So all the noise being made, there is no political will to say we do not agree. So what is going to happen is compliance is going to set in at the expense of you having a position that this is not the local government reform we want.
No, it's not. That's not the case at all. What are you saying is not going to be implemented, for example? The 4 years?
Can I jump in? Can I jump in? So, for example, Go ahead. So, for example, I'm glad that, Derek, that you made that point, because that has been one of my one of the positions that I have taken relative to when the question is asked, okay, the PNM is in central government, the law has been passed, so the law is the law. Why this conversation about, or the need for the PNM to now retain local government, most of the corporations in order to implement, this legislation that has already been passed. And Derek made a statement about the whole issue of implementation, but operationalization. And then he asked the question to Dr. Mayu about whether or not UNC held corporations, whether or not they are going to indeed operationalize the said law when the entire law, the law in its entirety, is proclaimed. Now, why I'm saying that, and then Mr. Mayhew would have jump in and made the suggestion, what part of the law that asking the question, suggesting what part of the law we're not going to support. Now, the Hansard again reflects a very large part of this legislation is property tax. And we have had senators, and I could speak for the Senate because that's where I sit, and the Hansard would reflect senators upon senators, from Senator Mark to Senator Roberts to Senate, the 6 of them that sits in the Senate, on the record indicating their strong position that one, they are going to challenge property tax legislation legally, and of course voicing their non-support for property tax. That is a critical part or element of the operationalization and implementation of local government reform, because that's where it takes money to care, and that's where the money is going to come from for these corporations to be able to do what they have to do. My simple question is, and if Mr. Mayhew can speak on behalf of his party and give an assurance to this nation that whichever corporation that they will implement the law, because it is the law, then I am expecting, and that statement has been made and it has come out of his camp, I'm expecting that once property tax come on board, then similarly we'll have that support for property tax.
All right, I think, let's give us a moment. I think we want to go away because, we cut away because my understanding is that the Prime Minister is addressing reporters at Balize House. I'm going to go to that.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen of the media. I'm not sure that you're all hearing me. There's so much noise around. Okay. Good night, ladies and gentlemen of the media, and I gather we're going live, are we? Yes. Good night to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Tonight is a very special night for us at Balize House because, as you might have observed, we are finally back in our original location we've been working We have not been in this location for a public function since 2019 because all of COVID, we were not here and we've been engaging in construction of one kind or another, but we are at Balize House where the PNM has always been for the longest while. But tonight is special because we have taken part in the electoral process in a democratic country using the Westminster system, and in the middle of our second term, we at the PNM tonight, we are very happy that we have performed much more than encouraging. Notwithstanding the relentless barrage of hopelessness, anger, and whatever else has been stirred up in the country, we went in, we have 14 corporations in Trinidad, we went in with 7, and tonight we have come out with 7.
Well done! Well done, PNM.
We lost a seat in San Fernando by a few votes. As a matter of fact, we've almost breasted the tape in very many votes, very many seats by a few votes. But it's only where you have crossed the line that you can claim. We lost 1 seat in San Fernando, but most importantly, the battleground of San Fernando, there were those who were going to win the borough. They won it. They won the borough. We won the city. San Fernando remains in PNM hands to effect local government reform.
Yes.
There's one particular seat that we enjoy more than many tonight, and it's the seat that we won in Princestown Corporation where we had none. Last time out we had nobody in that corporation, and we won 1 seat in the Princestown Corporation, and we are delighted. We fought very hard in Sangre Grande, but we were not able to get over the line in Sangre Grande, but we held our ground. And ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased that this is behind us, because so much of our national energies were focused on being distracted by call the election, call the election. Well, the election has been called, the results are now known, that is now behind us, it's water under the bridge. We are now moving forward to the general election, which is the next election that is due in Trinidad and Tobago. But until then, until that election is called and come upon us, we have serious work to do as a nation. And we in the government, we are responsible for making decisions. We have had to make a number of decisions that have not found favor with people who are affected by it personally, but in many instances, you may have to do things for the wider national interest, but there is usually some excess sacrifice at the personal or community level. I am particularly pleased that as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, who was called upon in this place of Balize House to take responsibility for the PNM in opposition in 2010, and to bring the PNM into government in 2015 and to take this country through one of the most difficult periods that we've had to, and maintain, as far as we're able to, maintain our lifestyle, our quality of life, and ensure that the public interest is served. And midway through our second term, we have been able to hold on to the 7 corporations that we went to. I want to thank the campaign teams across Trinidad. I want to thank our party executive members of the PNM and our General Council in particular, who allowed themselves to be guided through the maze and the nooks and crannies, because politics is not a straightforward thing. You need to be able to roll with the punches and to deliver your own counterattacks. This is the PNM. Tonight we are very happy to have now gone past the local government elections and to have done so going forward to carry out our local government reform exercises, which will redound to the benefit of the wider national community. I have absolutely no doubt that as we transition through local government and bring about the devolution that we have promised, that the nation will see the benefits of setting out to do things differently and to do things better. You see, local government reform is not something that we dreamed up here. It's something that we have worked on as a nation for the longest while. And of course, you would have known that we, as government, we said that it would be transitional. And we did attempt to delay the election by extending the life of the corporation by 1 year. And during that year, a number of preparatory things would have had to be done. You would also have seen, you know, like tonight on my way here, I was listening to a radio program, and those who on the program were saying that, well, there's so much that the population was unaware of because so many things were being done and so many laws were amended to bring about the local government reform that we're talking about. And it appears as though the population was not sufficiently attuned or educated. It is not for want of trying. You may recall that after the law was passed, we did try to invite the leadership of the local government bodies in the country to discuss that very thing. That, listen, there's a lot to be understood still. There's a lot to be planned and executed. There are laws, there are aspects of the law to be proclaimed. So we all need to be on board in operationalizing the law. Unfortunately, we did not get that kind of support and enthusiasm. I am trusting that now that the election is out of the way and that the results are known, that common sense will prevail, and that the leadership across the aisle in the parliament and in all the corporations, that they will work with the government as we implement local government reform. The election is over. My invitation tonight is come do the best for your community. Come do the best for your burgess. Come do the best for your corporation. Come do the best for your borough. Come do the best for your city. And if we all do that, then we would have done the best for Trinidad and Tobago. We have absolutely no doubt and no fear that the next election will be vigorously fought. But let us not waste time trying to fight that election before it becomes due. Regardless of who comes, the PNM will be there to contest every seat in every election. One of the things that the PNM has done tonight, we've added 2 more political parties to the list of political parties defeated by the PNM. And that has been the record of the PNM. And we will continue to have that record as long as we put the interests of the people of Trinidad and Tobago first.
That's right.
And therefore, I cannot stand here tonight before I take your questions. On a night like this, where we have fought so hard and have held our ground, and not say, great is the PLM! Great is the PLM! Great is the PLM! And we have prevailed! If you have any questions, I'll take some questions now if you have any.
Well, someone would argue that going in with 7 and come back with 7 is not a win. It's in fact a loss.
Well, listen. My grandmother told me that no matter how the situation is, it could easily have been so much worse.
Correct.
We are quite happy to not have been defeated or to have lost significant ground or any ground at all.
Correct.
In the middle of our second term as government.
Well said.
Mr. Prime Minister, good evening to you. What does it mean to the PNM that in a corporation like Diego Martin, the NTA would have amassed some over 30,000 votes and they
30,000 votes?
Where you got that from?
That was our information.
Where you got that from?
That was our information.
We got 30,000 votes in Diego Martin.
No, my lady.
You said that, Gary?
Your information is wrong, and you are not to take information from that source again. I don't even think the whole of
Diego Martin, you even have that.
I don't even think the whole of the Northwestern Peninsula have 30,000 votes in local government elections. So, but the bottom line is, it doesn't matter how much votes they got, the PNM won every seat.
Well said.
So we're not going to split any years about counting how many votes there and how many, who got the popular vote. In the Westminster system, first past the post, you fight for seats. You fight for seats. And we have won Diego Martin, all the seats in Diego Martin. We won all the seats in Port of Spain. So the shocking new mayor that was being promised is not going to be had. We won significantly in South Laventille. We won handsomely in Piaco, Tunapuna. We tied one seat in Arima, otherwise we'd have won all the seats in Arima. And of course, we won all the seats in Point 14.
Yes. We've maintained local government reform. What's next for the party going forward?
Well, certainly, we, as I just told you, immediately the operational team in the government and a local government, the full local government, will begin to see how we move forward to operationalize local government reform. But the general election is due because we are midterm. So sometime in the not too distant future, the focus will be on on general election and on national issues. Some people try to fight this election on national issues. We did not engage them much. But now that we are going forward to that general election, sometime in the not too distant future, the battle will be joined.
And won.
Mr. Prime Minister, what is your message to the nation as they wake up tomorrow morning?
Come, let us build a nation.
Well said!
Just want to find out any timeline for local government reform, as now I believe you've indicated that's going to move forward.
Well, there are a number of steps to be taken, and I use the word transitional. We have to transition into local government. It is not the kind of thing where you flick a switch and it happens by brightening the room. The laws that are going to be impacted now, a number of aspects of the operations now, and that's why the law has, you need to proclaim, as you are ready to do certain things, you proclaim that aspect of the law and you operationalize it. So that is why we had said, give us an extra year with the council that was in place, and we used that year to transition into local government. There were those who felt that we were running from the population, running from the polls, and all this courthouse, this and courthouse, that. When the Privy Council ruled, we said, okay, since you think we're running from the election, we call the election, we contested the election, and you have changed nothing. Notwithstanding all the negatives, all the lies, all the bad talk, all the undesirable folks who offer themselves on your platform and your campaign, you have changed nothing. And tonight, on that score, I am very proud of the people of Trinidad and Tobago who refuse to be swayed by those blandishments.
Well said.
I continue to maintain that public service is honorable. And you would see me encouraging, and I would encourage thousands and tens of thousands of young people to come into the PNM and participate. But I believe that there's no place in our local politics for promoting dishonesty, criminality in public office. No place. If you find yourself in that situation, stand aside and let the country proceed in a way that we can be proud of. This election had all sides of the diamond. Good, the bad, and the ugly. The PNM has come out of it, holding our heads high as a political party that stands on the principle of what is good for the country will have to be good for the PNM, not the other way around.
Well, Mr. Prime Minister, on that note, you did say in one of your conversations that we will find out a certain something after August the 14th with regards to the FEO report. Any time frame with regards to that?
Well, that's a matter that's in the court. And we are being guided by the instructions from the court and, of course, the work that is being done. But what I do tell you, that the government of Trinidad and Tobago, as far as we are able to, will share with the population the concerns that we carry, and we believe that the law will take its course. There are a number of reports that are wrong. There are a number of court dates I think we still have. And it's a strange thing indeed, where there are people who had public responsibility spend their time trying to prevent the Prime Minister of the country from telling the Parliament and the people of the country what the people should know about how their business has been run, especially in an area of national security. I think that should be of concern to every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago. So that's where it's at. Thank you all very much, and see you again.
Thank you. It was my legs, not
of the Republic, speaking with the reporters at Baise House, the first time that there's been any gathering in the building, which has been under significant renovation over the last couple of years. So could we get some final comments from you all around the table now? Tim House, we'll start with you.
We have a sub-mall position, so we really haven't moved from where we are. As to where we go forward, that's really what I think we need to focus on. Do we need a new force that changes the politics? Can there be such within our own political persuasions of the people? I don't think that anything I've heard either tonight or in the lead up to the election, which would lead me to believe that we are going to embark on something where the people feel that, you know, we can develop a prosperous, successful nation where everyone has an equal opportunity to achieve the potential that they have, so they all can flourish according to what their goals are. And that is a sort of dynamism we need to create, where people can feel excited about it. One thing we don't know tonight as yet is what is the voter turnout. And that's not unimportant. We know what the result is, but the voter turnout will also send a signal as to whether we just remain in the status quo, if in fact we've drifted backwards, or if we've gone forward.
Which the population was energized about.
Yes, and I think that's an important part of the equation, given that you have a 7-all outcome here tonight.
Yeah, I think you put the best possible spin on it, because you don't go in with 7 expecting to come back with the same figure. You wanted to win in that kind of way. Derek Gramsowicz?
I think general elections campaign have now started from tomorrow morning. And the lessons from this local government of inspiring your electorate, of getting your messaging right, of convincing voters to vote for X or Y regardless of our flaws in our present system, is what will happen from tomorrow morning. So we're going to have a greater level of brutality in the politics as the country drives towards the new general elections.
Senator Renuka Sagram Singh Suklal, what's your take? What's your closing comment?
I just want to thank you again for the opportunity to sit with these most esteemed, gentlemen, and of course the panel, Mr. Dr. Mayhew, or two doctors who are joining us. I just want to reinforce the words of the Honorable Prime Minister. Come tomorrow morning. Let us, and this is something that I have personally said on the political hustings over the past couple of months, and as cliche as it may sound, come my brother, come my sister, take our hands and let's build our nation together, because that has always been the modus operandi of our party throughout the length and breadth of this election, and more so our Honorable Prime Minister. So tomorrow, the election results are in today, yes, but tomorrow it's a new day and it's about building our nation as we seek to implement and operationalize local government reform. Because whether you're red or yellow, once a local government is operationalized in a manner in which it is intended to, we can only see this redounding to the benefit of every single citizen, whether you're from Never Dirty, Laventille, whether you're in the heart of Siparia, Montenevo, wherever, it can only redound to the benefit of our citizens. And because, of course, I'm a proud member of the People's National Movement, I will, of course, take the opportunity, though, to remind the nation that the People's National Movement will always stand as a better and right choice for this nation. And, just springboarding off of what Mr. Ramsey, which has been advocating for all even this afternoon, especially to our young voters, and coming off of what Mr. Hammersmith say, I do believe with conviction that in the People's National Movement there's a place and a space for every single citizen, irrespective of race, class or creed, to be able to succeed and more so evolve and be all that they can be. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Well, thanks to you and the other two gentlemen on the panel. Thanks also to our guests who've been with us, Dr. Kirk Mayhew and Dr. Denise Falangas, Nikolai Edwards, for all of us here at WESN. Thank you very much. I'm Andy Johnson. We see you around.
Good morning, good morning, put a smile